All right, good evening. How is everybody doing? Got a very special night tonight. It's a big night. Barrett Brown is here, and we're going to be taking your phone calls. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. That's right, Barrett Brown. I'm going to talk about, well, he's going to be with us all night. You're going to meet Barrett, but get ready for that. So this is your opportunity to ask questions and say thank you to one of the most important voices of our generation, somebody that has lived an extraordinary life and continues to do so. And he is here with us tonight. And I'm going to talk more about Barrett in my little opening rant and why this show was so important for me, and which is what Fade to Black has always been about. Okay, these are the things that motivate me and that interest me. And I do this show for myself. And tonight I'm doing this show for me. And you're going to get to participate in that. And I hope that all of you will come away with something tonight. Listen to every word. I've been saying this. Listen to every word. And then later, go out and look at some of his films that he has been in, his YouTube videos, his past writing, his current stuff. He's got a new book coming out. We'll be talking about that tonight too as well. But an extraordinary writer, just extraordinary journalist. And so, yeah, you will remember tonight. It's a very, very big deal. Been putting this show together for 2 years, okay? So, very excited, and he's here to take your phone calls. We are going live right now. It's Fader Night. I'll see you guys in a minute.
Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah. How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? It's Fade to Black. Thursday night, it is Fader Night, July 12th, 2018. That's right, 193 days into the new year, just 172 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in beautiful downtown Burbank, California, and I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planet. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? It's Thursday night. It's Fader Night. I'm in the chair. Very special presentation tonight, because tonight we have very special guest. Barrett Brown is with us. That's right. One of the most important voices of our generation. And tonight we're going to break it all down. Journalism, prison, the mass media, and what it is like to live a life going against the grain so he can speak the truth. That is our evening tonight. And then later on, it's Fader night, which means open lines. So Barrett is going to hang with me and take your phone calls. And this is your opportunity to not only reach out to Barrett and ask those questions you've always wanted to ask, and it's all there for you, but also to say thank you. All right? And so you can do that all night tonight. And wouldn't it be fun? You know what? I want to hear one of you ask Barrett a UFO question. And the other day, I don't want to reveal too much private conversations, but the other day, Barrett and I were talking last week, and he brought up Heinlein. And I was like, right on, right? So anyway, and we were talking about late night talk radio, coast to coast and other things. And he had brought up some of his articles that he had written, futurism. And he's right there, and it was so fun to hear that side of him. So maybe we'll go there tonight, too, as well. It's your opportunity to do that. It is your show. Our guest tonight is Barrett Brown. And also, I did want to mention that John Rappaport, again, is out doing research. And he had sent me this text, which allowed us to, get Barrett in here tonight, too, as well. Now, I've been working on the show with Barrett now for 2 years. I'll talk more about that in just a bit. But so I get this text from Rappaport. Goes, man, okay, I'm going back out, emergency research, and I said, go do your thing, man. I just come back and report from the road, right? So that allowed us to do this show tonight. It's called Synchronicity. Everything just worked out. So tonight, Barrett Brown is here, and I wrote up a little piece over at OnStellar today. And I do want to say, spending my days over at OnStellar, I mention it here all the time, but you must understand, I'm a social media person. I like to get out there and connect with all of you. This is a big, big, big community, and we have managed to join together, and we do it over at OnStellar. So I was over there today. I was writing and reading, and I posted a little thing about tonight's show over there about Barrett. So you can go and check that out. And it spells out some details. And some of that, I like to post my show notes over at, because I write, during the day and I'm getting, my head together. So I like to post those show notes over at OnStellar. So you kind of get an idea of what I'm going to talk about on the show each evening. And you can go check out all of that over at OnStellar. And I love everybody's responses to profile pics because I get it all day long. Dude, I got okay, man. I'm all good, man. Profile pic. And I immediately friend and connect. Yeah. So get over to OnStellar, OnStellar.com. An amazing social media platform that is built for this community. We've got some big changes coming up. Yes, our video channels will be happening very shortly, so stay tuned with that. There's going to be a live streaming element ready to go, and I think we're going to do our first run on that. I'm going to host it in about a week, so get ready. We'll announce who my guest will be, and it's a testing of the platform just to make sure everything is cool. So that's coming up. So OnStellar, OnStellar.com. Use my referral code, which is Jimmy. You're going to want to do that, so just do it. Jimmy, get over to OnStellar, get registered, and come and hang out with all of us. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Facebook is still alive for us for the time being. Cannot wait Until I never click on Facebook again. I'm closing that thing down. And YouTube is still alive for us, too, as well. We've got, 60,000 some odd subscribers over there. We have our Fadernauts and we have our podcast and we have those subscriptions and other things that are out there. But there are so many out there that just go to YouTube for their content. And I get that. So do we keep YouTube alive? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't. I really don't. All right. But in the meantime, it's all there. You can go to jimmychurchradio.com and go and follow, like, subscribe, do whatever you want to do. And if you're going to hang out with us in Twitter, at JChurchRadio, of course, is my Twitter feed, but hashtag F2B is the sandbox. So we'll go through a few thousand tweets tonight like we do every single night on Fade to Black. Come and hang out with us, join the conversation there. And we have 2 chat rooms open, one at Spreaker and one at KGRA. The Planet. You can also email throughout the show, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Okay, breaking news. Let's get straight to it. We've got a lot of stuff to discuss tonight. Breaking news. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said today that 27 more people have gotten sick in a multi-state outbreak of salmonella. That's right. And all of this is linked to Kellogg's Honey Smacks. It used to be called Sugar Smacks. Honey Smacks. That's right. The cereal. This brings the total number of illnesses to 100 since March. And the outbreak was not announced until June. Yeah. That's crazy. That just makes you just want to just stop and think. Right there. 20% discount right now on all offerings from River Moon Coffee. And the promo code there is Coffee Break, 2 words, Coffee Break, 2 words, rivermooncoffee.com. And that includes our Fade to Black blend. Okay, 20% off right now, River Moon Coffee. Don't forget to sign up for our Soul Tech Gathering up at ECETI Ranch. It is this August 9th through the 12th. All you have to do is go to soultechgathering.com. It's going to be an amazing event. We've got James Gilliland, we've got Jason Quitt, Matthew Ryan, Michaela Sheldon, Teresa Yanaris, Holly Marie, Mary Gabrielle, John Lund, Dana Harvey, Billy Carson, Laura Cantu, and Christine Contini, all there to teach. We've got 5 classrooms set up. We're going to be teaching for 4 days. You're going to want to come and hang out and learn. All right, and I'm going to be there. We have sky watching going on every single night out on the Field of Dreams. We've got music, we've got entertainment, we've got a party for Saturday night. There are day passes now available if you don't want to come and camp and hang out. You just want to come for 1 day. Come and do it. Okay, Friday, if you want to come out for 1 day, we've got the opening ceremonies and everything going on in the big hall. And then, of course, Saturday are classrooms all day long. And I'm going to be doing a couple of panels in the big conference room. So that's going on. And then, of course, Sunday, the party. All right, great food. Everything is set up and amazing. Come and hang out with us. All right, it is soultechgathering.com. All right, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. We have over 885 archive shows. Custom apps, Apple, Android, all platforms, just $2 a month. You can also become a Fadernaut in our membership section on the site where you get the bunker cam. Everybody's watching me right now. It's kind of weird, right? It's radio, but I've got a camera in here. Last month when we went through our issues with YouTube and we weren't running the bunker cam, it was great. I had 2 weeks of no camera staring at me in the face. But unfortunately, I've got it now. There you go. Hello, everybody. You like my shirt? Hawaiian shirt? That's right. Sent to me. It's a Bali shirt, actually. Not quite Hawaiian. Sent to me from Reverend Jimmy Pearson over in the UK. Love it. Absolutely love it. He sent me a collection. That's right. And you get to see it right now in the bunker cam. If you can't see it, that's why. All right. Don't forget all of our sponsors. Okay? Life Change Tea, GetTheTea.com, River Moon Coffee, Ancient Life Oil, Sacred Skulls, New Mana Food Storage, and, of course, Bearing Optics Night Vision Goggles. Let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today. Topher Grace is 40. He was great in American Ultra. He was really good in Get Shorty, the series. And you remember Dan Fogler, right? Right, Dan Fogler? He was on the show here a couple of years ago. Star of the film Don Peyote. And if you haven't seen it, you got to check out Don Peyote. But also, and Freeman flies in Don Peyote. But Topher Grace is also in Don Peyote. Cheryl Ladd today is 67. And most would think, well, you know, I'm saying that because of Charlie's Angels. I am not. No. It's the movie Millennium, one of the great time travel movies of all time. If you've never seen Millennium, go check it out. Michelle Rodriguez today is 40. I'm a big fan of Michelle, but I became a bigger fan after I watched this ayahuasca documentary. Now, obviously, I've never taken ayahuasca or DMT. I just don't do those things. I drink coffee, chilled vodka, and thick prime rib steaks. That's my life, right? Friends and family. That's me. But ayahuasca is intriguing, you know, and I try to study it, and a lot of our guests here talk about it, and Graham Hancock. So I'm watching this ayahuasca documentary starring Michelle Rodriguez, and she goes down to South America, and she does the ceremony, and you get to see her before and after. It's amazing. Michelle Rodriguez, happy birthday. Today she is 40. Our dead guy's birthday today is Charlie Murphy, 1959 to 2017, died at the age of 57. Best known as being a contributing writer and member of the sketch comedy show Chappelle's Show alongside comedian David Chappelle. But it was his first major role in the 1993 film CB4 that remains his funniest. That's right, playing Gusto in the city of Low Cash. Murphy ended up dying from leukemia last year on April 12th at the age of 57. On this day in history, OTD Disco starts its decline on this day in 1979 with the infamous Disco Demolition Night at Chicago's Comiskey Park. That incident, which led to at least 9 injuries, 39 arrests, and the cancellation and forfeit of a Major League Baseball game, is widely credited or blamed, whichever one you want to choose, with dealing disco its death blow on this day in 1979. Now, here you go. Fate or fact. Is you ready? Fate or fact. As of 1998, over 50% of Iceland's population believed in the existence of, wait for it, elves. That's your fate or fact. All right. Tonight, very special guest Barrett Brown is here. And we've been setting up this show for 2 years. And I have covered Anonymous. I have covered hacktivism. I have interviewed many times Greg Hausch on this program and Coast to Coast, and Gabriella Coleman, otherwise known as Bella. I have attended the Hope Conference. Excuse me. The Hope Conference in New York City, in Manhattan, at the Roosevelt Hotel, right there, 7th Avenue. And I have gone as deep as I can into all of this. I have. And there are 3 documentaries that all of them have appeared in, Barrett and Greg and Gabriella, and those of Anonymous. The documentaries are We Are Legion, Terms and Conditions. Terms and Conditions May Apply, and The Hacker Wars. And those are 3 films that after tonight's show, I suggest this after every time I interview somebody from Anonymous. These are 3 films that you need to go and watch. And it's not so much about Anonymous, because there's the intriguing part of that, right? The Guy Fawkes mask. There's all of that, and who they are and that mystery, and I get that, but you need to go back further and a little bit wider on why even Anonymous is here. Okay, but then you have the other parts of it where lives were affected. Now, I stayed at the same hotel in New York with Gabriella and Greg Hausch when I was there for the Hope Conference, Hackers on Planet Earth. And Greg Hausch and Gabriella, well, Gabriella is a professor in college and that, but Greg Hausch, somebody that also was sent to prison, one of the nicest, coolest, brightest, intelligent people you could ever be around. Very cool guy. And to think about the wrath that was brought down on his life and the complications from all of that, the price that was paid, it's enormous and it's incredible. And you meet him and you just think it's just not right. It's not fair. I have thoroughly gone into all of this since everything started to surface back in the early 2000s. On March 6, 2012, the FBI executed search warrants at Barrett Brown's apartment and also over at his mother's house, and they were looking for evidence of these crimes. The items that they seized, including, and listen to this, they were looking for records related to HB Gary, InfraGard, Endgame Systems, Anonymous, LulzSec, the famous LulzSec, IRC chats, Twitter, Wiki, Echelon2.org, and Payspin, right? Agents left with computers. By the way, all of this was on a live feed, and that's another story, too. We'll talk to Barrett about that. And then you have, as this reaches out, now I was thoroughly researching all of this in the 2000s and just totally all the way up through the end of everything. And then you have Jeremy Hammond. Talked about him a lot on this show. He was sentenced back in 2013, a kid, to serve 10 years in prison for hacking Stratfor, along, of course, with Greg Hausch and Barrett Brown, and releasing those leaks through WikiLeaks. Now, you may not know, I talk about a lot on this show, but when I talk about WikiLeaks and I talk about these individuals, you need to understand the connection and the relationships with all of this and how the man just couldn't handle it. 10-year prison sentence for releasing stuff on WikiLeaks. 10 years. Jeremy Hammond. Look up that name and look at his face, and you just tell me, is that right? Brown faced up to 45 years in federal prison. They originally brought down, and that's just for Stratfor, by the way, but they hit him with 105 years, just like they did with Greg Hausch and Jeremy Hammond. He faced up to 45 years in federal prison for allegedly sharing a link, a hyperlink to the data Stratfor as part of his Project PM. The shared link was apparently from Hammond's hack. Now, I need you to understand. You copy and paste a link, and now you're looking at 45 years. As part of the charges, 105 years overall for sharing a link. The arrests were all due to an informant known as Sabu. I have talked to everybody about Sabu. Sabu was put in a bad position by the FBI. And he had his family, he had his kids, and they were doing the same thing to him. And then everybody fell. Barrett Brown, Jeremy Hammond, of course, Greg Hausch. It was an incredible situation. All because the man and security agencies and private security companies couldn't handle what was going on with their own computers. We are talking about young adults here. and we're talking about the computer age, and we're talking about 1984. It's exactly what was going on here. And in Barrett Brown's case, he's a journalist. He is a hacktivist. He is somebody that's out there trying to make change in society. He copied and pasted a link, and then everything unraveled for him. And they came straight after his mom. Some of the things that were posted by Barrett, videos, we will talk about that, the bathtub videos, and others threatening the FBI because of a direct result of, not only his emotional state at the time and certainly being threatened and being on the run, but for them coming down on his mom. And which is what the man does. And the man did all of this, and going back to Sabu, because they couldn't control the narrative. Anonymous was decentralized. There was a very loose situation that was going on here that they didn't understand. And that's where we are today. And when we go back and look at the events of 2016, 2017, and we think about the complications in our lives today with mass media, with social media platforms, with fake news, and the journalism that is going on today, and the way that the man controls us, and not only controls the daily dogma that they continue to do, but they want to divide and conquer all of us and get us in fighting. That's how you control us, by getting us out of control, getting our eyes off of the prize, getting our eyes away from the reality of the important things that are out there. And you need to think about that. And who is doing something about that? The decentralization of everything. Well, certainly OnStellar and what it represents is part of that. But this is something that Barrett Brown and others have been talking about and seeing the future of for a very long time for us, and paid the price because the man doesn't want us talking about it. That's the importance of the show. It's the importance of my life. And when you sit down and listen to me on an evening talking about friends and family and cooking out and this community and everything that I deal with on this show, and cracking jokes and music and guitar and all of that. These are the things that drive me. And I know that you are concerned by the same things, because that's why you are here. So, going back 2 years ago, as I started to cover all of these important things, and I went out to New York, and I went to the Hope Conference, and I was out there with my team and my production team and cameras and producers and directors and assistants and sound and lights and all of that stuff that we did going into the Hope Conference. And it wasn't a pretty day for me, weekend, because not only was Barrett in prison and others in prison, and Jeremy Hammond, these things were going on for them. And I show up as a member of the media and a television network and a radio network trying to get this story out. Why? Because nobody else will talk about it. And that's why I was there. And that it continues to this day. And now Barrett got out of prison, and I've been after Barrett for the last 2 years, because tonight is the trifecta. Gabriella, Bella, Greg Hausch, and now tonight, Barrett Brown. It's a very important show. You need to understand how Barrett got here, how I got here, what joined us up tonight, and you are going to be part of all of this. Okay? And now, so this is the setup for the show. We're going to do 2 segments with Barrett and myself, and then after that, we're going to open up the phone lines for you. It's an important day. You will remember this show. Have fun. Enjoy it. Listen to it again. And there you go. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. I am so happy to have gotten to July 12th, 2018. Barrett Brown will be here right after this short break. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Barrett at Barrett Brown _ at the end. It's all right there in Twitter. Now, I'm going to go to a break. And when I come back, or while I'm at break, I want you to check out this tweet that I'm about to do of Barrett. It's absolutely incredible. I'll be right back. Stay with me.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights. Just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
What can I say about the most popular tea on the internet? And what do customers say about Life Change Tea at getthetea.com? A lot. But by federal law, we at getthetea.com cannot make claims to how this product can enhance your health. We cannot even post our testimonies without being in compliance. So how do we get past the hump? Try our products at getthetea.com and see for yourself. You can send us a testimony, but we just can't post it. Bummer. Our products are GMO-free and organic. We pride ourselves in being the best we can be, and we urge you to take charge of your health. We're 11 years strong, and many of our customers have shared their successes with friends and family. Protect your colon. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. Getthetea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show. On the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Win big with KGRA this summer. Tickets and hotel accommodations to the biggest conferences, autographed books and DVDs, chances to win all-inclusive conference cruises, and private dinners with your favorite KGRA hosts. Click the contest tab at KGRAradio.com for your chance to win big this summer. Your contact for the best alternative talk radio on the planet. KGRAradio.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Matthew. You're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Very special night tonight. It is Fader night, Thursday night. Open lines with a very special guest. Barrett Brown is here. Okay, I laid it out in my little opening rant, and I think you get it. Barrett is a writer. He's an anarchist activist. His work has appeared in Vanity Fair, The Guardian, The Intercept, Huffington Post, New York Press, Skeptic, The Daily Beast, Al Jazeera, and dozens of other media outlets. 2009, he founded Project PM, a distributed think tank which was later repurposed to oversee a crowdsourced investigation into the private espionage industry and the intelligence community at large via emails stolen from federal contractors and other sources. In 2011 and 2012, he worked with Anonymous on campaigns involving the Tunisian revolution, government misconduct, and all of those other issues. In mid-2012, he was arrested and later sentenced to 4 years in federal prison on charges stemming from his investigations and work with Anonymous. While in prison, though, he won the National Magazine Award for his column, The Barrett Brown Review of Arts and Letters and Prison. Upon his release in late 2016, he began work on the Pursuance System, platform for mass civic engagement and coordinated opposition. We're going to be talking about that tonight. And his third book, it's called My Glorious Defeats, will be released from Farrar, Straus, and Giroux in February 2019. I would like to welcome to Fade to Black for the first time, Mr. Barrett Brown. Barrett, good evening, my friend. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
It's good to hear your voice, actually. When I spoke to you last week, I said, man, it's so good to hear your voice. So how are you doing? Let's actually get that out first. How are you today?
Fantastic. And I agree, my voice is always nice to hear.
Yeah. And you get the first-time guest disclaimer. You're going to be on with us a lot in the future, and I look forward to that. But tonight you get the first-time guest disclaimer, which is, Barrett, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. Where it starts, where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. There it is. You ready to go?
That's very reassuring, absolutely.
Okay, now I want to start with the present day and your mindset, and then we're going to go backwards for a little bit. But today, did you ever, back in 2008, 2007, 2006, in your journalistic career, have any idea about the turmoil and the 1984 Orwellian nightmare that ended up unraveling and a journalist being arrested, and that we would be talking about this stuff today? Did, in your futuristic mind, did you think that this would have happened?
You know, I guess I didn't, come to think of it. I had some pretty severe ideas about what might happen to the American Republic over the next couple decades, but it didn't occur to me. You know, I was a humor writer in large part, in addition to being a journalist, and that's how I started out. And this was a trajectory that kind of came about by a number of events, you know, that I could not have possibly predicted.
The vision of the future, which is something largely, well, the humor side of it was always cool, and your personality came out that way. You were in demand. You were somebody that all of the publications wanted you to write for them. And did that affect things somewhat? In other words, did ego come into play as well, not only through your writing, but starting to face the man that you could take all of this on?
I always assumed that. I've had very megalomaniacal tendencies since I was a small child. So that part of it is actually pretty in sync with everything else. Obviously, as I started to look at the possibilities of the internet, as an adolescent, there was a sense that this was a land grab, that this was something in which you could make yourself without having to climb up the institutional ladders and all that, or get a college degree or any of those things. This was something. It was very apparent to me that this was something new and open, just like the old, frontiers.
It was exactly that. And then the other fascinating part about this, and I have asked Bella, I've asked Greg Hausch the same important question. I'm going to lay this out to you. The man in general, the man didn't understand Anonymous. But Anonymous may not have understood Anonymous as well, in that what started off as lulls and laughter turned out to take down governments and countries, right? That's a whole nother thing. And did you envision that happening too as well?
I did, actually. When I first came across the sort of online venues from which Anonymous eventually sprung, which was 4chan.org back in 2006, there was something there that fascinated me quite a bit. The ability to bring in and sort of harness large numbers of people very quickly and allow them to put their ideas into play and to act upon those ideas. This was very new. And even though it was being directed at that time with these little sort of Dadaist, surreal pranks, the basic ethos of this, the basic structure around it was kind of the same. It was basically, the big problem in the 21st century is going to be, how do you arrange large numbers of people or allow them to self-arrange some particular end, now that that's possible for the first time in human history. And that was one of the early answers. It was an accidental answer. It was something that was not supposed to be an answer. But it was something that gives us the lesson that anything can become anything else, for one thing. And that there is a great deal we're going to see in the decades to come out of these amorphous online movements. They will give rise to all sorts of things. And they're going to be very, very hard for us to envision today, even with the experience we have now.
Going back, this question isn't the simple one, which is, would you have done anything different? No, that's not the question. The question is, would you, now knowing that you did go to prison, that would you have done something more extreme anyway, right? Did you hold back? Was there something else that you would have liked to have done back then that, you know what, you went to prison anyway? Was there something else that you could have driven some screws in?
No, I can always go to prison again. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the balance I struck back then. The great thing about the DOJ coming after me in the way that they did was that it was so overdone and so suspicious that even mainstream outlets that are generally not real quick on the uptake figured out pretty quickly that this was retaliation for my investigative work into firms working with the government. And so they made the case for me, and for the research that we did with Project PM and with some of these people from Anonymous, they made the case for how important that stuff was in a way that I never could.
Any regrets?
I would imagine so. But having said that, one never knows what sort of drawbacks and difficulties are going to later on open up new horizons. And that's certainly true for me. So I feel like I shouldn't regret anything.
When you got released, I watched the film, right, and the little short documentary, and I'm looking at your parents and specifically your mom. And now, not to get any emotions out of you or anything, but you look at your mom, who and your dad, who are your parents and obviously love you, but my blood boils that is the tactic that the FBI took, was to put pressure on you via your parents, who are obviously two of the coolest, groundest people out there. And that ignited a lot of your anger back then too, as well. How do you feel? Do you accept what they did, or do you still, boil just a little bit?
That's something that, I'll have plenty of time to respond to in the future. I mean, I've learned patience. You can't forgive a police agency that you already despised and which you already think is fundamentally dangerous and deleterious to the things this country was supposed to be about. You can't forgive them, on top of all that, for going after your mother, for prosecuting your mother in order to try to get you to cooperate with them.
It was just a crazy story. And so let's actually go back and not getting really specific. We don't need to do that tonight, but as things started to, we can go back actually with Jeremy and take a look at that part of things where obviously you didn't know what was going on, the investigation and the way that they were doing things. Otherwise, it would have ended differently. But did you have suspicions? Were you looking at some of these situations that they were closing in? Did you have any idea?
Yes, there were a number of indications, even aside from the usual sort of paranoia that always crops up whenever you're doing something that the FBI is probably after you about. For one thing, there were the time at the point I got involved with Anonymous to work on the Tunisian Revolution, which was something that a lot of Tunisians were involved in on the Anonymous front, as in some of the fellow who later on joined the provisional government was a member of our AnonOps server from which a lot of this stuff was organized back then. At the time I joined, the FBI had just raided 40 households in the U.S. Guns drawn, families herded into the living room, all electronics taken, because of the DDoS attacks, the denial of service attacks that a couple thousand people had participated in to knock down MasterCard's sort of corporate website for a few seconds, which didn't cause any damage to the ability to process payments, by the way. A very minor, almost kind of a digital sit-in, and that elicited this massive nationwide police response and then simultaneous raids in Britain. So that was the situation when I got involved. The first things I, was doing, aside from the Tunisia assistance program, was getting lawyers for these people, going to the National Lawyers Guild, going to Jay Lederman, going to some of these other just sort of radical old attorneys, and getting identifying the people who had been raided and putting them together. So I heard a lot from these people who had been raided about exactly what would happen. So there was never a question that this was a path that led in one particular direction. And as time went on, as we started discovering things that were very upsetting to the U.S. government, there were more indications that I would eventually be targeted.
The other part for me on the outside looking in, it was a harsh reality check for the FBI and all of those agencies that were looking into this, that it was decentralized and this was something that they were used to organized crime, right? The exact opposite is what they were dealing with here. Do you think they came down also as hard as they did because, they were just, pissed off that they couldn't control this situation at all?
That's a very strong possibility. Among the many slaps in the face that we gave not only them but also the GCHQ in England and a number of actual dictatorships and just companies all over the world. At one point, Anonymous got in on a Interpol FBI phone conference, recorded it, and posted it online a few minutes after it ended. And it was the conference was about Anonymous, so that was embarrassing to the FBI. Things like that, if you've ever dealt with authority figures, that to injure them in some way is to invite retribution, and there was a great deal of injury, in their direction during that period. So it would have been surprising had they not reacted, probably because of that, but also from a policy standpoint, from the standpoint of a government or from people who basically just sort of accept that degree of authoritarian government as necessary. Something like Anonymous that comes out of nowhere and is at 1 year raiding video game servers and making little memes,
right?
And a few years later is helping to take down the Tunisian government, and then a year later you got the NSA director saying these people will be able to take out power plants soon. He was lying about that. I don't think he really believed that, but it was something that the trajectory, I'm sure, was very alarming to a lot of people.
And so, okay, so now take us up to that day of the arrest. Again, it's not so much about the sensationalism of it, but it was a live video feed too. I wanted to ask you about that. Were you anticipating anything on that specific day?
Yes, I was. For one thing, first of all, they had raided me without arresting me in my mom's house as well and took in electronics, all that. They left a search warrant, which Michael Hastings put up on BuzzFeed after that. It's still up there where you can see the exact companies they were looking into. It was HB Gary, In-Game Systems, our website on which we compiled our information about these companies, and my group, Project PM. That was always the point of this. That's the secret search warrant started shortly after we revealed all this stuff to the public. So, and then I received sort of a tip on March 5th, 2012 about that raid. I was not tipped off about the next raid, which is about 6-7 months later when they stormed my apartment with a SWAT team. That was something that took me by surprise, and I think that comes across in the recording that's online.
And what ultimately did they do there? Did you think that this was? Did you have any idea like this was your last day of freedom for a number of years? Did you think you were going to get released later on that day?
Not really. In the aftermath, after the raid, which was went very quickly, it occurred to me. Well, actually, at first I thought, I know exactly what these guys are going to charge me with, and I know it's nonsense. So surely it should be easy for me, a journalist who has a megaphone, to bring that to public attention. And I'm sure the courts work the same way. And so I was very naive. I didn't realize I had never really dealt with the federal courts before. And I knew in the abstract that the DOJ is a very imperfect entity. But I did not know very much at all compared to what I know now about that system.
How much of it can you discuss right now? Am I free to just ask whatever?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yes, anything.
Okay. Did they offer that first day, Barrett, did they offer you a deal to flip?
No, they hadn't actually even charged me. It was a criminal complaint they used to come raid me, and then they had 30 days to come up with some charges, and they charged me with threatening a federal agent based on my comment that I was going to investigate this guy in the same way that this intelligence contractor had plotted under the DOJ with their approval to investigate the families of activists. So I knew it wasn't a violent threat. I knew it didn't violate the statute. So when those charges came, I was still, there's plenty of I can get out of this. But no, that the FBI, after those first charges, about a month after, I was in jail this whole time, they did approach my first attorney, who was a public defender, and said that if he, tell him that if he wants any kind of plea bargain, as in if he doesn't want to go to trial and go do 20 years, he's going to have to make a deal. And I just told him no, and I got new lawyers. In the process of raising the money for those lawyers, the DOJ then came and tried to seize that money. They not only seized the money, or tried to seize the money, they shut it down for a few days, and the judge eventually made them give it back. But in the process, they also sent a subpoena to WePay, which was the crowdsourcing site that was being used for my legal fund. And they demanded the identifying information of everyone who had donated, which is well beyond their purview. Later on, they got sued for that years later when it became evident. But so this was a situation in which some crazy new thing would happen every couple weeks. There was some like a gag order. There would be accusations from them in filings. They called my new lawyers before they were actually my lawyers, and which is something that's not done. There was always new information and new concerns and new threats. So it was really hard to assess at any given time what I was in for. Now, they made one more offer later on after they had charged me with these other. I'll let you go into that since we're sort of moving forward on that one. But they did eventually try to get me to plead to one count of aggravated identity theft, as opposed to the 11 counts they had hit me with. I was facing a minimum of 22 years in prison on top of the other charges, altogether facing 105 years worth of exposure. They offered me to plead to one of those counts of fraud, and I turned them down because I would never plead a fraud. And I certainly wouldn't plead a fraud in that context. It was had I done so, they would have been able to prosecute anyone who links to stolen information in the future. So.
And all of this sounds so criminal, and so you were just a journalist, and that's the other part about it. Being a spokesman or not for Anonymous, really, we're talking about a journalist with a career that was doing these things to disrupt, but ultimately that is what we're talking about here. But they wanted to make this into something that it wasn't, and that's exactly what they do. Was it? Looking back, did they ever scare you? Did they intimidate you with these charges and with these, a century in prison kind of thing?
Oh, certainly. I mean, I spent 2.5 years in pre-trial in detention. So there's plenty of time to think, am I overestimating my abilities here? Have I gotten into something that I can't get out of?
Right.
Plenty of time to reflect on that. But ultimately, we developed a plan that would not only hopefully get me out of prison at some point in the medium future, but also finish our work, bring a great deal more of attention to these companies, and essentially use the DOJ for that end. As in, obviously, everything they did was another opportunity to go out there and say, here's the search warrant listing these firms. These are the firms that Barrett Brown was investigating and wrote about, and in some cases exposed their private programs. This is what they were after him for. This is what the search warrants actually say. These other things are red herrings, and that's the case. And so we were effective enough in that everyone from the New York Times, New York Times ran 2 op-eds, both saying, this is retaliatory charges. Washington Times, mainstream outlets that, again, normally are not very good on picking up on these nuances. This time they did pick it up. And so ultimately we put a pretty big dent in their credibility, and I think opened the window a little bit wider towards these intelligence apparatuses. And of course, by that time, Snowden, while I was still in jail, Snowden came out, and that changed the conversation further. So all in all, it was a pretty good couple of years for intelligence contracting journalism.
Now, and there is also, to clear things up, let's put something on the record. I want the audience to understand ultimately what came down here, which was Stratfor, which wasn't in the original set of charges, but that's ultimately which you were convicted on, correct?
Right. So what had happened was these hackers and Anonymous had originally hacked these other companies, HP Gary and all that, and we exposed a bunch of stuff, and those were really the emails they took from that company, which had claimed it could identify our secret leadership, quote unquote. The emails that they took were instrumental in thwarting several very bizarre plots, including attacks on WikiLeaks, the setting up of activists on fraud charges, DDoS attacks of the same sort that Anons get raided for and arrested and charged for all the time. And then later on, 8 months later, so while we're now focused on these companies, there's another hack that Jeremy Hammond, another anonymous hacker, is involved in, and that some of the people in my Project PM group were also aware of. And that was a hack of Stratfor, which is a firm in Austin that supposedly, was in the business of providing sort of risk assessment to their high-end clientele and that sort of thing. It turns out, based on the emails that were stolen this time and later given to WikiLeaks, that this firm was spying, for instance, on activists in Bhopal, India, who were trying to get Union Carbide to pay more restitution to the people that they had maimed or left family members dead in the 1980, Bhopal disaster, the Dow Chemical deal, that sort of thing. They were collaborating with the FBI against private citizens. The FBI was giving their files to this private company at the behest of their clients, like Coca-Cola, for instance. Just very bizarre stuff. Any one of which of these stories, I think, should have been an eye opener for people. But anyway, so that hack was what they eventually decided to charge me in connection with. And at first they charged me with having copied and pasted a link that Jeremy Hammond had posted into one of these anonymous chat servers where we do a lot of this work. I had copied the link, pasted it into my Project PM IRC Internet Relay Chat server for my journalists and researchers to look at, thinking it was some of the emails. Mm-hmm. And it turned out those were credit card numbers. And as you can see from the transcript, which was part of the court record, it was pretty clear that I didn't know those were credit card numbers. I asked him what was in those. He says like B and C, something like some jargon. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. Government forensics show I never opened the file. They were already, anyways. It was one of those things where it was just they had to charge me with something, and they know that even if it's untenable, and of course they had to drop all those charges, all 11 of those counts for a number of reasons. But it was just something to charge me with. Now, eventually, what I pled to after they had to drop those charges, which was a real embarrassment to them because it was a centerpiece of their case, they wanted me to plead to something in connection with the year of activity with Anonymous. So what I pled to was accessory after the fact for the Stratfor hack, because what I did was when the hack had initially occurred, and when Jeremy Hammond and a few other people were debating about what to do with these emails they had taken, a couple of us were arguing that you don't dump them online. We don't know what's in them. There could be information in there that could get someone hurt, perhaps informants under a foreign dictatorship, who spoke to them. And so I called the company, Stratfor, called its executives on the phone and offered to handle any redactions that needed to be made if these emails were to indeed be dumped online. And that is ultimately what, and it's something that the DOJ never mentioned in its earlier filings, but by the time we got into this 2-year process of them having to drop all these charges, that was enough for them. So when you hear people who are national security enthusiasts talk about how their big concern is that innocent people might get hurt from these dumps, keep in mind that that's what I tried to do. I tried to rectify that, and that's what they used against me. They don't really care. if someone gets killed over this. It's helpful to them. It helps make their case and helps them argue for more and more classification.
Now, we're going to head towards a break here in about 90 seconds, so I'll see if I can get a quick answer out of you. To me and to others, the Stratfor hack and the way that it was done was really a sting operation, wasn't it? Wasn't it more like entrapment?
It was something that had actually initiated with some run-of-the-mill criminal hackers, I think, out of Eastern Europe, and they had taken control of the server secretly at some point. And then at some point, that control was handed over in parts to other people who made it way too anonymous. So there were several people, including myself, who knew that Stratfor was compromised.
Right.
One of the people who knew it was Sabu, Hector Monsegur, who was one of the major anonymous hackers who had been involved in these previous hacks that had yielded all these emails, and who, unbeknownst to us, had been secretly discovered, found, identified, and turned by the FBI 7 months prior. So this Stratfor hack and everything else that Sabu presided over was allowed to happen by the FBI.
And that's the part. That's the real criminal activity here. And it's something that has been discussed but not exploited. I'm sorry I had to say that word. But it's really the true part about this. Sabu, this was entrapment. It was entrapment through and through. There wasn't any way to, well, obviously there wasn't, but wasn't there a legal way looking back to take advantage of the entrapment part of this and have all of this go away?
There were all sorts of things very much like that. I mean, you're absolutely right. That and several other aspects, including information they concealed from my lawyers, and which ended up in the press after I was sentenced, showing again that I had no intention of losing credit card numbers. That should have been introduced. We had a legal team that involved several different people who did not necessarily mesh well, and some things that were pretty major were actually lost in the cracks. And I tried to bring up a lot of them myself in my allocution when I spoke to the judge for 10 minutes, which we made public. But, that's just not enough. And this judge in particular was he was not terribly fastidious about making sure that we're doing things by the book. That's not unusual among federal judges, unfortunately.
Yeah, the crime was allowed to happen. If the FBI, we're going to take a break right here, but if the FBI was really on the up and honest, which they're not, of course, but they would not have allowed the crime to happen and allow all of these individuals to go to prison. It's an incredible situation. Our guest tonight, Barrett Brown. This is Fade to Black, a very special Fader night. We're going to continue this discussion when we come back after this short break. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Barrett right after this. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Does your basement or crawl space have a damp, musty smell? Well, watch out! That's a sign of too much moisture and not enough ventilation. And that can mean increased mold growth and the buildup of harmful toxins and gases. Don't bother with a dehumidifier. It just circulates the same unhealthy air. Now there's a better way to remove these dangers and odors. It's with the computerized Wave Moisture Control Unit that reduces moisture and expels pollutants.
We replaced our old dehumidifier with the Wave unit, and in only 3 weeks, our basement is dry and the musty smell is gone.
Wave units require no maintenance, no buckets of water or filters, and costs only pennies a day to run. Breathe better, live healthier with an affordable, no-maintenance Wave unit. Call 888-717-WAVE, 888-717-WAVE, or visit dryhealthyhome.com. Dryhealthyhome.com.
Ride the wave. Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy.
I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers.
Yes.
We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. And you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
Ancient Life Oil. Life-changing. The real oil. CBD is truly ancient life oil from the source. This oil has no psychoactive effect and is also legal in all 50 states. When you're healthy, you're happy. The truth about this wonderful plant is that it wants to give back to mankind life, longevity, and happiness. Ancient Life Oil are golden grade, all organic, non-GMO, and infused with high-quality liquid coconut oil. It's simple. Just go to ancientlifeoil.com today. That's ancientlifeoil.com. The best, purest, organic, and non-GMO CBD in the world. Go Backley Tappy. The statements made regarding these products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please consult your healthcare professional about potential interactions or other possible complications before using any product.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Very special Fader night tonight. We have Barrett Brown here. We're going to open up the phone lines at the bottom of the hour, 323-825-5045. So get ready for that. I'm not opening up the phone lines yet, so don't start dialing, but we'll do that at the bottom of the hour. And Barrett, okay, prison's behind you. You're walking out. You've got your bags. You're walking out of prison. Your mom is there to greet you. As you left and that door closes behind you, what went through your mind at that point? Okay, that really sucked. I'm never coming back. I'm reformed. Did that thought go through your mind? I mean, what, as you were walking up to your mom, what were you thinking about?
Assumed that I think the prison staff themselves were pretty certain that they'd see me again someday, and I had already been on record doing interviews from prison about what I would be doing when I left, and that of course was starting the Pursuance Project.
And the emotional part of seeing your parents again. We're going to move on from this right now, but I would just want to get inside of your mind, because when you're in prison for that length of time, now being, free, well, you're on your way to a halfway house. You're not exactly free, but what was that like? Did you have any issues with reality? I mean, because now you can do things like walk around and change your mind and not have somebody around you, and the confinement part, you're free again. Does that take a little bit of adjusting?
Yeah, readjusting back to civilian life was harder than adjusting to prison in the first place.
I can only imagine that there was a shot of you where you guys stopped at like a truck stop or something when you were driving to the halfway house. And you were like in a bathroom, I think. You know what I'm talking about. But it looked to me like you were right there like, wow, okay. You weren't comfortable, I guess is the best way to put it. You weren't, were you?
Oh, no, not at all. For one thing, we had a certain amount of time to get from the border of Mexico, where my prison was, in South Texas, to Dallas, and they originally did not give us sufficient time. And I happen to know from talking to other inmates that they will put out another warrant for you if you are late and unaccounted for at that halfway house. So I had to argue for more time, that we would have 7 hours to drive this thing that takes about 7 hours. And they were making a documentary about me at the time, so we had a lot to worry about. And having said that, just in general, the halfway house. I was not excited about that. And I'd actually considered staying in prison for the last 6 months rather than take that halfway house time. The reason they gave me so much halfway house time, which 6 months is actually pretty unusual these days, is to get me out of there, because I was filing a lot of administrative remedy forms based on due process violations. Obviously, I was writing a column that was pretty popular and won the National Magazine Award about that prison and about the BOP in general. So they didn't want me there. But the halfway house, you have to go to a whole other thing, and now it's, it doesn't have the same charms as prison, a halfway house. I'll tell you that.
It's the same charms. Okay. Wow. Okay. Now let's go to today. Since your release, which was November 2016, you have seen this country go through the world goes through some crazy things with not only internet privacy, certainly WikiLeaks and emails, data mining, fake news, crazy controlled journalism with an agenda. All of the things that you had warned us about in your writings leading up to 2016. Here we are today. What does anything surprise you right now where we are with the internet, privacy, journalism, mass media, and fake news?
I'm mostly, the one thing that keeps surprising me is the extent to which people have just given up on nuance. It's very difficult for me to make an argument that someone could look at and believe is en route to another argument. As in, if I say, look, the FBI is corrupt, look at this, people think that I'm supporting Trump. If I say something on the exact opposite of the party line, people will just take that and extrapolate from it. So it's very hard to say, look, these organizations, the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, we should not be cozying up to them, regardless of what you think of the investigation. These are not fundamentally sound groups. They never really have been. They've differed. So it's people have become, I think, more intellectually dishonest. I think obviously people have gotten the opportunity to avoid reasoned criticism of their positions by going online and just reading a certain array of people who think like them, and they have not availed themselves of the opportunity to look at all the facts and judge both positions on any issue before making up their mind. And that's something that was already happening, but the extent to which that's gotten worse, that's what's horrified me most.
It seems to have happened pretty quickly. Now it built up to this point for a couple of decades, but certainly the divisiveness and the effectiveness of different media platforms out there with the internet to divide and cause this anger. And the anger now is everywhere. Is there a way to pull it back and get everybody back on the same page?
No, I don't think there is. I think we were ill-served by all of the rhetoric about this being one nation, and we're all, deep down where we have fundamental things in common. We really don't. This is a fractured nation, and there's no reason to expect that it shouldn't be. There are not fundamentals in which everyone agrees on. It's just not the case. And so I think the best strategy going forward is for those people who agree on these sort of open society ideas in general, they're opposed to the surveillance state, opposed to the police state, sort of things of that nature, should work together more efficiently, figure out how they can address their fundamentals and how they organize, how they try to affect change, and just sort of prepare for whatever may happen.
The warnings were there, right? The warnings were there, like 1984, Brave New World, and we all knew that this day could arrive, but we considered it brilliant writing and science fiction. I don't think anybody is surprised where we are today, that we are here, but we indeed are, and these things have come to pass. And it seems like nobody wants to do anything about it. Well, except for yourself and me. I don't get it why everybody was aware of it, but now they don't want to do anything.
I think civic virtue, whether it be the forms that we may agree with or disagree with, just the the impulse to act at self-risk if necessary, that was something that was very much in play in the 60s and 70s on both sides,
right.
Whether it be Nixon's people or the anti-war people and civil rights. People were more willing to do unusual, adventurous things if they thought it was necessary. That's something that is slowly just deteriorated in this country, as far as I can tell. I was born in 1981, so what do I know? But from what I can tell and from what I can hear from people who were around, this is a different population. People are different. People my age, in particular, the internet, which I have obviously, depend upon for the things I want to do, I think does have a very deleterious effect on the adventurism, the adventurism that was the norm back in the 18th and 19th centuries.
And now there's another fascinating thing about this that not only that you write about, but I think we're all becoming very aware, is that in the 18th and 19th century, certainly going all the way up to the 80s before the internet, it was a slow process for change or to affect emotions. It was slow. A lot of it was even word of mouth or flyers or magazines and that kind of thing. Today, it is down to nanoseconds where you have millions of people that are reacting literally at the click of a mouse worldwide. That is something that is completely spun out of control, and the man and the media outlets understand this. It's a nanosecond away from crazy emotions.
There are several just vastly fundamental changes of the sort we've never seen this degree of that have come into play, sort of all centered around the internet since I was born. Historically speaking, going from the 1980s situation where you have international phone calls and you have letters and all that, we consider ourselves a connected world. Going to 15, 20 years later, it is a fundamental difference in the environment to have anyone in the world be able to collaborate with anyone else in the world. That is something that had human history. Have we always had that power? Have we had some kind of telepathy whereby you could have organized with people in China from Britain in 1400? Our history would be vastly different. So suddenly this is coming to play. Suddenly this is now possible. And a lot of people haven't really thought about what that means. There are some people who are thinking about it very much, and those are the people at DARPA, IARPA, some of these companies that are sort of given the task of managing the government's response to the things that they think are going to come down the pike.
Let's talk about what you are doing now with the Pursuance Project. Tell us about that, because this addresses all of these changes that are possible.
Yeah, I mean, these are basically the issues that I'm obsessed with. The issues of the broad issue of, yes, now we can now collaborate. Now things are fundamentally different. The nation state, the geographical, associationism that is informed all of our structures, all of our political institutions. They all date back from when it made sense to work with your neighbors, and there was no other option. And so these institutions, they've continued on to this age, and they've changed a bit, but most of them are not capable of changing fundamentally and adapting to these new realities. And so, some of them will do better than others. In the meantime, those of us who are keen on history and are thus worried about what might be happening soon, even the things that have been going on in the last 10 years or so, I think pales compared to what may very well happen in the next 20 years. And so those of us who look at it that way, who think that these are times in which profound change can occur, and either will be done by others who we may disagree with, or will be done by us, we have sort of a responsibility to approach this question, this key problem in the 21st century, which is how you organize large numbers of people that you agree with in some basic way and get them to act in a way that's not just fun and histrionic. It doesn't involve just going in the streets and shouting and holding signs, but that really can grow perpetually while refining itself, never becoming overburdened, while still being able to grow quickly and adapt. That's what the pursuance system that we're building is intended to do for people who believe in the open society, who are opposed to authoritarian governments. This is sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, give me an example of a project.
Yes. So this is something that is geared towards a couple different constituencies, one of which is the people like those in Anonymous or Telecomics or these other groups that were sort of on the cutting edge of working together online against criminalized institutions and thinking up new effective ways of doing that. This is a way of letting them organize in a more effective way than the amorphous kind of haphazard ways that we did with Anonymous and some of these other things back then. It's also a way for existing institutions, groups that are out fighting for civil liberties, imposing transparency on government, to better make use of the people who support their causes, to not just have them sign petitions and make donations, but to get them arrayed into a sort of self-organized network that can grow again and sort of become a real asset to those groups, and to have them work together, and as well as journalists. We want journalists to be able to use this for crowdsourcing, which is a very powerful tool that we used to good effect in 2011. We did such a good job that the FBI came down on us. So these are some of the basic uses. But one specific example that I'll be involved in, to give an example of what this thing can do, we'll be putting together a prison reform project. We're going to be creating a information package for journalists in regional markets, for local newspapers, that kind of thing, local television stations, and teaching them how to cover prisons effectively by using FOIA requests for the grievance forms that inmates file in prisons when they want to go to court. Inmates aren't allowed to just write to a judge and say, hey, I'm being kept in a cell and beaten every day, and they haven't told me why. They have to go through this process that Congress laid on us back in 1996, whereby the prison itself gets to oversee the process. So they have to say, okay, you've turned this in on time, and we're definitely going to, put that in the record, and we're going to submit it to the next branch of the BOP, so on and so forth. All the state prisons have this. The federal prison has it. So those, as I documented in my column, tend not to go very far. You could have expected that if you had thought, if you thought about, how viable is a self-defense mechanism that relies on your enemy to function. And so we're going to be working with journalists we're going to show them that not only can they effectively and crucially cover these prisons, cover what's going on in him, but also do it in a way that helps them. And that's very important when you're dealing with a lot of journalists. Most of them are careerists. So we're always keen to point out that this will make your job easier. So there's a number of projects like that are intended to take people who have these skills and want to help do something and get them arrayed into something where they can decide the terms of their involvement and then grow and interact with something else that's broken. So if you think of pursuance, if you think of the state or any institution as a big old building that's kind of crumbling in some places, maybe it has cracks in the foundation, maybe it needs a paint job, you don't all have to agree on what needs to be done with the building ultimately in order to start building scaffolding around it and get together on the parts with the ones that you all agree on. The other thing about scaffolding is you can affix nets to it. So when the building starts crumbling down in the future, bricks won't fall on people below. So that's what pursuance is for states.
And could it also, I envision environmental issues and tackling that and taking on those big corporations that are messing with the environment, or maybe fracking, or maybe plant some trees you know what I mean? Is there?
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. It's just whatever you want to pursue.
It is essentially an organizing platform. It's a platform for mass civic collaboration. It's we call it process democracy. So all the participants come in by invitation from existing participants. That's how it grows over time, and of course it will grow exponentially, like those things do. They decide what they're going to work on. Anyone who comes in can create this pursuance, which is this living organizational chart sort of thing. And this ecosystem arises where all these different projects are taking shape, and you can see what they are to the extent that they're visible. Obviously some projects need more security than others, but it'll be much easier in this ecosystem to find the people that you want to work with and find the people with the skills that you need and offer them a position in this little group you've started than it is anywhere else. It'll be more secure as well, since it's end-to-end encrypted. Nothing is 100% secure, but we have additional layers that are just not available to people who are using Slack right now for these things, or Facebook. Right.
Where can everybody go check out the project right now?
pursuanceproject.org. It's PURSUANCE project.org. That's where you can find some diagrams kind of showing what we mean by when we say a pursuance. It's obviously something that's hard to explain just verbally, but you can see what we're doing. You can see what kind of uses it can be put to. You can see examples of what certain organizations like Frontline Wellness, which is a nonprofit that goes and provides medical training and conflict resolution in conflict zones around the world. You can see examples and kind of get a better idea of what the possibilities are here. But basically anything you can envision as someone who supports the free society, if you just agree to these basic principles, anything you envision, anything you want to work on, the odds are that there's going to be someone working on something similar. So you can join their pursuance or start your own. It's something that's very, very universal, very scalable. Ultimately, this is not a content neutral system. We're not trying to empower cops or Nazis, but we are, anyone who agrees on these basic precepts that we list is welcome.
Now, you've been envisioning this. This isn't something that just happened overnight either. You've been looking at this structure and applying this for how long?
The first iteration of pursuance was what I set up Project PM to do in 2009, and we had I had recruited a bunch of people using my columns that I had in Huffington Post and Skeptical Inquirer and different places, saying, "Look, I'm going to build this thing, and if you're in, let me know." My editors were horrified by this because it seemed very silly to them. This guy is calling for this big civic platform, cyberpunk thing, whatever. But I did it anyway. And so we got a number of people who were all very sort of early adapter types. Oddly enough, my second in command at that point was a former IRS lawyer. So it was a mainstream group. Then I got involved with Anonymous, and because the Tunisia thing was happening, and then one thing led to another, and that all fell by the wayside. But in the meantime, obviously, I had the opportunity to learn quite a bit about both the broad lessons of online organization and human organization in general, and the little mundane things that you kind of pick up after a while, and apply all of these things into this system. So the system we have now, the way this works now, is far more refined than what we were originally putting together. But even that was it was useful enough to those who saw it that we had no problem recruiting for it. And this is obviously vastly better, which is why we have a board of directors with some pretty high caliber figures like Brigitte Jonsdottir, a member of parliament from Iceland who was formerly involved with WikiLeaks, John Kiriakou, who blew the whistle on CIA torture and also went to prison, a number of college professors, journalists, that sort of thing. We don't just have an idea that I'm going to sit here and say, oh, if everyone did this, it'd be great. We have the means to get people in and use it. And that's the important part that I always want to make clear, because there are great ideas out there. There's things like liquid democracy. There's all kinds of software platforms for organizing. The problem is, because of just the goofiness of how we prioritize what we're going to do, they don't get a lot of media pickup. So we do have this opportunity to ensure that beyond the 1,900 people and organizations that have signed up thus far, that over the coming couple of years we bring in 30,000, 40,000 high caliber people with different skills, different backgrounds, different means of acquiring information, and let them work out exactly what they're going to do.
Does this kind of thing that you have gone through, I don't want to be loose with what I'm trying to say here, but I'm talking about the big picture. Do you feel like it's restricted your opportunities out there for journalism now? Have those calls stopped, or is the phone off the hook?
Well, it's both. The DOJ has made it very difficult for me. They rearrested me last year when I was still on halfway house, basically on I forgot the term for it. Wasn't on probation yet. Had me rearrested because I gave an interview to Vice, another one to PBS. And they claimed that I wasn't allowed to give interviews. I happen to know for a fact, since I had given them from prison, for instance, over the phones a number of times, and was familiar with the actual guidebook on that for inmates, that I was allowed to. And I told them, no, I'm not going to get your permission to give interviews. And they rearrested me. Publisher down here paid $11,000 to a law firm to threaten them to take it to court, and they let me out immediately. Then they subpoenaed The Intercept, which I used to write for. They subpoenaed my publishers and my agents for the book that I've got that, of course, has a lot of embarrassing DOJ material beyond what's already available. And they subpoenaed them for all my communications between them and the editors, and also demanded that they not pay me my book advance until further notice. And that further notice turned out to be quite further indeed. So just yesterday, after a year, I got my income, the income I've been waiting for a year. So they've definitely done what they can to stymie this operation, particularly pursuance. They know that I was planning and had already started sort of self-funding it from the get-go. And so they sort of prevented me from being able to do that. Luckily, we have volunteers that care enough about this that they have done this stuff with no money, and in some cases even put in their own to go to conferences and that kind of thing. So on the other hand, obviously, if anyone who Googles my name, they're going to see a great deal of material about the things that I called correctly. They're going to see, that I have certain unusual qualities for a journalist. One of which is that I don't just want to be a journalist. I don't want to just have readers. I want to have constituents, and that obviously makes it easier. It makes me more credible, having the awards and all that I wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't gone to prison. That helps me with mainstream people, and it's kept my credibility up among those, the less mainstream. And that's been very important to doing this, to putting this together. A very big part of this is getting people's attention in the first place. Another big part of it is being able to get prominent figures to come out and endorse it and to work on it and serve on a board of directors. And those are things that I just would not have been able to do to that extent had the DOJ not come after me in the way they did.
Well, you ready to take some phone calls after this break?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Let me fire this up. Our guest tonight on this wonderful Fader night, Barrett Brown, is here. All right, I'm going to open up the phone lines after this short break. 323-825-5045. It is Fader night. It's open lines. Barrett Brown is here. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously, go Beckley Tappy.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
Hi folks, what can I say without making claims? CBD is truly the buzzword for health. What does it do? Government institutions will not allow me to say what this wonderful oil does for us. But I can say it's non-GMO and organic. I can say it's 0.003 THC, which in plain English means you won't get high. There are those that want to squash your freedom to buy natural products. Fight back with your purchase power. In the end, it is you that takes care of your health. Go to AncientLifeOil.com. One more time, AncientLifeOil.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your Jimmy Church. It's Fader Night. It's now open lines, 323-825-5045. Our special guest tonight is Barrett Brown. And, all right, Barrett, you ready to do this?
Absolutely. I was born ready.
Let's, everything that we deal with on the show, which is conspiracy, the man, the New World Order, and UFOs, and ghosts, and spirituality, and all parallel worlds and time travel. You never know what these phone calls are going to be like. So let's see what we have first. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hey, Jimmy. It's me. It's Zoni.
Zoni?
Yeah.
Okay, Zoni. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Say hi to Barrett.
How are you, Barrett? How are you tonight?
I'm fantastic. I'm always fantastic.
What have you had for Barrett?
Well, I'll let Barrett start. I'm always good at answering questions, not really asking them.
Good. I'm going to ask you this. We have a Kickstarter going on for this Pursuance project we've been talking about. This is everyone out there who is a former whistleblower, who was involved in fighting for the free society with their skin in the game. They all agree that this is the best way forward. So we have 3 days left. How much money are you going to put into this Kickstarter?
I don't have any money.
Well, there you go.
I have $5 in my PayPal account.
Who has money you're going to approach and say, hey, there's this thing called Pursuance, you got to look into it?
Okay, one at a time here.
I'm sorry, Barrett, excuse me.
That's okay. What Barrett said was, we need to get the word out. You need to let your friends know, too, as well. Bang this out and retweet and get it out there for us.
I shall do that right now, because I'm sitting in front of my computer, guys.
You tweet, and I'll retweet your tweet. How's that?
I just retweeted your tweet, Jimmy, about Barrett Brown's Pursuance project, and I read up on it a bit, and I like the idea very much. I need to read more in depth about it, but I'm with you guys all the way.
Thank you so much, Zoni, and behave and be well. I'll retweet your retweet, okay?
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for the time. Thanks for accepting my call.
Yeah, thank you. And, Barrett, there's... it's going back to the spirituality side of things. You had a long time to contemplate about, yourself, your life, the past, and what the future could be. Did you have any type of, did you see the light? Did things take off?
Assalamu alaikum.
No, I'm being serious. Yeah, sure.
No. Well, I'll tell you this. Before I went to prison, I was very much a horrible little anarchist robot. And anytime I read a book, I would be thinking to myself, is this something I can use in an argument someday to win? And that was a sort of a fault, that's just deep in my psyche. It wasn't until I got to prison and was at first facing the prospect of 20 or 30 years when I was able to sort of let myself go and enjoy things like poetry.
Really?
Yeah, and geometry and reading, just picking up knowledge that is not necessarily useful. That was something that I finally was able to do, and that's very much enriched my life.
And one other question: did your diet change?
Oh, by necessity.
Yeah,
Depending on where you are, yeah. But I'll tell you, I developed a taste for green beans and rice because that's what they allow you to have all you want of. They have a little tray there, so in addition to your allotted food,
right,
you can have all this green beans and rice, and I think it's a great dinner by its own.
So, oh man, I don't want to make light of this, but is that part of your diet now?
Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, it's one of the things I picked up. Another one is freeze-dried coffee. They've got some very strong, very robust freeze-dried coffee that they only sell to prisoners. You can't get it really out here without going to the distributor. And someone sent me like 8 or 9 bags of that not long ago. So I've still got that in my diet.
That is very interesting. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
This is Doug from Lake of the Ozarks.
Hey, Doug from Lake of the Ozarks. Say hi to Barrett Brown.
Hey, Barrett, how are you?
Greetings.
Yeah, I got so many questions, but I guess I'll ask probably the one that's I consider to be the most important. And let's say someone is maybe setting on some information, or they know some things or whatnot. What kind of advice or recommendations would you give to someone who's maybe wanting to expose something or
there are organizations, one of which is the Freedom of the Press Foundation, that is staffed and overseen by some very high caliber people who have they oversee. I believe it's them that oversee this secure drop of the Dropbox. It was something that I believe Aaron Swartz was involved in creating. Aaron Swartz, of course, was one of the really visionaries of the internet, and he ultimately committed suicide, facing 20 years in prison by the DOJ for having made available documents from MIT. It's another thing it would take too long to really go into this, but there are organizations like the Freedom of the Press Foundation you can find online, and outlets of that nature that have experience in whistleblowing, and you should read their guides on there before you do anything, before you send a single email, before you log on to a news site that you might plan on leaking to. We have some examples of what not to do in some of these cases. I don't want to go in specifics here, but you can find those. You will never regret being very cautious, and you will never regret reading a great deal of material out there, weighing it, and looking into the people writing it. The Freedom of the Press Foundation is probably the best place to start.
Yeah, all right, cool.
Anything
else,
Dave?
I didn't have to escape to Russia or anything like that. So
yeah,
no, not yet.
I'd heard a thing. I heard a thing about Snowden had his deal in here a while back, and he had some advice, I guess, for people, and he got but unfortunately the advice was get out of the country, and
well, it's good advice.
It is good
advice. Probably so. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate the question. I know you got other callers, so I'll get off here and leave you guys alone. But I appreciate everything you do, Jimmy, and you too, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you
very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Staying on Dave's thought process there, because I get it every day, as you can imagine, Barrett, I get stuff coming in my email, some stuff I'm afraid to even click on. I don't want to see it with my eyeballs. I don't want to have to face anything later. I'm very cautious about it. What would you do today if something was given to you that puts you maybe not only in jeopardy, but what would you do with that today?
Very similar to the advice I would give him or anyone sort of outside of the realm of media, just the person out there who might come across something. I would first, set aside what I think I know about security and immediately read some of these guides that have been written by groups like the Freedom of the Press Foundation before I made a single move, before I made a phone call, even on Wire or Signal or one of these end-to-end encrypted deals. I would first make sure that I have the best chance of having thought about all of those things that the FBI and NSA have had decades to think about in terms of how to catch whistleblowers. There is software. One of the things that we came across, one of the times when I did have an informant that worked out real well, when I was provided information about Raytheon. There was a project they were working on, and they're not alone in this, software by which to detect whistleblowers by looking at their online habits, that sort of thing. That kind of thing, as with so much else, there is software and technology and methodology that is kind of hard to hard for a skeptical person to believe in at first, but that's usually because if you're not a specialist in psychology or in forensics or in the intelligence community, there's a great deal that's just not going to be obvious to you. And so, always be aware of, that we came across some very extraordinary and disturbing programs during our investigations, like persona management, which creates fake online people and uses them for propaganda and to manufacture events. There's a lot of things that, objectively, neutrally impressed us with how powerful and dangerous they were. And even putting that stuff out didn't necessarily get everyone's attention. And so there are a lot of journalists themselves who don't necessarily know what to do if they get very sensitive information.
The community, the hacker community, when I went to the Hope Conference in New York, now bear in mind, I went out there I was filming my TV show, right? And I went out there to not only attend the hacker conference, which we had all of the paperwork and everything to film in New York, and clearance through Hope itself, and that those credentials. But I was there for Greg Hausch and Gabriella Coleman, amongst others. But what I thought that the community would take a look at me and go, okay, cool, he's here to tell our story. It was the exact opposite. There was a moment there, as you can imagine, Barrett, where I brought up your name a couple of times to get people's opinion, and was poking, and I felt like I was lucky to be alive. They protect themselves. They protect their own. And I was there to tell the story. They wanted nothing to do with me.
Some of these people, especially the ones that we've had to rely on here and there, who are hackers, are not fun to work with, and have, sometimes believe that their knowledge of networks translates into other things that it just doesn't. And so there is over cautiousness in some respects and under cautiousness in others. There's also a lot of play acting. It's very common among activism. People like to think that they're under more scrutiny for the things they're doing than they are. And of course, we know they're under a lot. Everyone potentially is, to the extent they do anything. But there's also a lot of what we might call the activist version of security theater. And that's something that makes it harder to do the things they're trying to do, because they don't really address that and think those things through. I'm not surprised that you had a bad experience trying to get some of these people to tell useful information to others. Not all of them are in favor of that. Not all of them are transparency types. Some of them are just sort of another elite cadre of people who are just there to be elite.
Well, and eventually, it took me a couple of days. I broke down some of those barriers, and I got some of them to open up. But I'll tell you, I got on one of the elevators, and I've got my producers with me, and a director and a sound guy, and a couple of I had like 12 people that were part of my production team. So it's big and it's obvious, as you can imagine, right? We stand out like a sore thumb. We get on one of the elevators. We're going up to the top floor there. And one of the guys on the elevator, an attendee, says to me, so who are you? And I tell him, I said, I'm here. I do this, and this, and I'm here with the History Channel, A&E. And he looked at me and said, you are out of your mind. Do not talk to me. Don't talk to me. Don't. And I said, but, and he literally said, do not talk to me. And the elevator doors open, and he took off. And I thought, okay, here we go. This is actually what this is going to be like. And it was a rough road, man. We were alienated. I mean, we were forced off into a corner and were, what's the word? Shunned. It was.
Yeah, and I should note that my assessment I gave a few minutes earlier. In some cases, like with documentary film crews, that is a tactic that the FBI has used. They used it, for instance, I think in the Bundy affair. faking a documentary production. So it's possible that someone said, "Oh, this must be another FBI thing." It's possible they're just nuts and rude. That's also very, very, very. It's a real possibility we have to explore. But there's very good reasons sometimes for them to be cautious, and sometimes there's not so good reasons. But things like Hope, things like DEF CON, even the ones who aren't there as intelligence agents there to recruit. There is a great deal of informants in that community, especially hackers. I've seen estimates that I don't think you can really ever come to a really useful estimate, but I've seen estimates that strike me as true, based on my experience, that some quarter of the people you might term hackers, criminal hackers, are associated with the government in some secret capacity. Now, it matters with the definition itself. Obviously, is a big factor there, but the bottom line is that this is a community that's fraught through with paranoia, and that obviously hasn't gotten better in the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, the famous game, right? Spot the Fed. And getting that T-shirt is a badge of honor. We'll talk about that in just a bit. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Barrett Brown. Who's calling?
Barrett, this is Casper Parks. First, thank you for everything you've done. I recall back in the day when they hacked Stratford and Trapwire popped up, which was a mass surveillance with cameras. And we look now at what's going on in China with that, and with what Amazon, with software and law enforcement, is doing in Florida. So we're seeing that come to fruition. It's coming out to be. I was seeing if you had any if you think that's going to get a lot worse now as we go forward.
Certainly, in large part because with that Trapwire situation in particular, the press was not able to assess that in a reasonable way. As in, that came out of the Stratford emails at some point. There was a couple of articles. One of the articles that was in the New York Times, and they quoted two people. One was a unnamed Homeland Security staffer who said, "Oh, it's not a big deal." Basically said that. And the other one was a guy with the ACLU who I don't think really understood what was being asked of him. And so that tone was set early on, and you had people like Adrian Chin at Gawker back then, who's always been kind of a goofy fellow, just saying, "Oh, this is boring, this is nothing," which he says about everything. Obviously, now we know, and that was my big problem back then with that particular issue. This is right before I went to prison. I was talking a lot about how badly that had been botched, because obviously facial recognition, it's not something really exotic. It's something we've thought about and envisioned for years and years. And it wasn't something that interested me in particular compared to some of these other things involving propaganda and disinformation that I'm much more interested in. But it was definitely something to look into. And obviously, you go back and look at articles back then, sort of mocking those who are worried about it. Well, that's just one more thing in which I think we were right, that's something that was going to come into play very soon. It's already being used in a number of places. I mean, the Trapwire thing itself is being used in the U.S. The company that essentially oversees that is Cubic, which is a huge firm that even a lot of security people haven't heard of, a lot of security journalists, which also oversaw all these subsidiary companies that they hide their relationship to, oftentimes successfully, except when we find the tax filings that prove they own them. They were the ones that won the Sitcom contract for persona management, which is something I alluded to earlier. It's the online fake people you can read about out there. That's the other big issue here. And that's why even when you find these secrets, even when you are already a journalist and are known for investigating these issues and have been successful in them, it's still hard to get editors and producers who don't really care or don't understand it to see the big picture. And so getting that information is half the battle. The other half is getting the press to do its job.
I want to jump in. Casper is still on the line, and
I have another question. But yeah.
Okay, well, Casper, I wanted to let Barrett know that Casper is an author, and a great author, by the way, and you should check out some of his stuff. I'll send you his books, Barrett. But what I wanted to ask a question and have Casper hear the answer. Barrett, your writing style is something that is, for me, very fluid. And is it something is it your brain directly connected to your fingertips? Is it fluid? I mean, does it just flow out of you, or do you have to work at it?
Well, I started writing. I had some internships at newspapers when I was 15 and 16 in Mexico and Dallas, and then got some freelance gigs by the time that I got to University of Texas. And I quickly I quit because I got a writing job for AOL. And so for them, back in 2000, when there was all this money to be thrown around for online content, and then that dried up for a while, I was writing about women's shoe stores. I was writing about 30 different Tex-Mex restaurants in Austin and having to differentiate each one.
Right.
I was writing 40,000 words on the bands at South by Southwest, and I had no idea what they sounded like. And so that was worse than prison. And so it's something that you develop, just like with riding a bicycle or becoming a ninja or anything else. It's just something that is now ingrained into my neurons, I suppose.
Yeah, because it sounds exactly like you speak. Or it reads like you speak. That's the wrong way to put it. Casper, you had one more question.
Right. I know that Harmon had, I think it was a twin brother who was in a rock band. Just curious how the band was doing, if you know anything about that. And when Harmon had had this trial, there was a question about the judge's spouse has some kind of financial tie-in to Stratford. And I don't know if they ended up getting a new judge in that or not.
I'm not familiar with the twin brother thing. It was pointed out. In fact, Kevin Gallagher, who just from scratch built this whole Free Barrett Brown apparatus right after I was arrested, and managed to raise all this money for my legal defense, and managed to sort of lobby the press and get them to pay attention. He or someone else noted and publicized the fact that Judge Sam Lindsay's wife was on the board of directors of one of these firms. I can't remember which one, but there was an arguable conflict of interest that I would say, if that is illicit, if that is something that rises to the level of he should have recused himself, which I don't really have a strong opinion on, it paled in comparison to other things that happened during that case. I mean, the Declaration of Independence was seized from my apartment as evidence of a crime. I made sure to note that in my sentencing hearing, so he eventually ordered the FBI to give it back. I mean, the whole thing was just so vastly problematic that I really haven't even thought that much about that conflict of interest. His big problem was that he believes FBI agents when they go on the stand, and no one else does. So,
Casper, thank you so much, man. When's your next book coming out?
Oh God, I'm hoping sometime after the first of the year.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I'm shooting for.
That's you and Barrett together. There you go. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for answering my questions. Goodbye.
No problem. Thank you, Casper. Thank you.
Thank you, Casper. Have a great night. And I wanted to go back. I've got like 2 minutes, but you brought up Aaron Schwartz, and again, just a tragic story beyond words. But most people today, because of the timing of everything and how it went down, they don't know the Aaron Schwartz story or his impact on the internet and his talent. His talent was beyond measure. And when you think about RSS and the other things that he was not only fundamental in, but they killed him. And they literally ruined a 26-year-old young man that was one of the most talented, period, and responsible for what we are doing today on the internet.
Aaron Schwartz's vision, was expansive. And, I spoke at Aaron Schwartz Day last year. It's actually where we unveiled part of the Pursuance Project. And we'll be speaking again next year. And they've actually been very heavily involved in this Kickstarter we have going on that ends in 3 days, by the way. We're trying to finish something that should have happened already by building this network. He was a specialist. He was a technology specialist, and so some of his stuff is beyond my purview. But in the main, and I met him a couple times online when he was going to do some FOIA requests on that persona management apparatus we were looking into, and just didn't really know much about him back then. It wasn't until he killed himself and I was already in prison that I learned who it was I've been talking to and what this guy was capable of and what we kind of lost thanks to the DOJ.
It's an unbelievable story. And, okay, we're going to take a break right here. I mean, when it comes, this is what really disturbs me, Barrett. When you look at all of these individuals, you being one, of course, but how these lives were affected and in some cases, tragically, like Aaron, who ended up committing suicide because of these threats of, 1 million years in jail and millions of dollars in fines and your parents and your reputation and your family, all over the internet and about the internet and about decentralization and about being an activist. And that, I think, is one of the most saddest parts about all of this for me personally.
It's important to us that a portion of his vision be realized in this project, and that's why a lot of his associates are involved here. It's important to a lot of people, obviously. There's some documentaries now about him, so hopefully he's gotten some wider recognition, not just for having been someone who was unfairly targeted, but for someone who, in being unfairly targeted, the world lost out by that. And that's something that I think over time he's going to be remembered as a very prescient fellow who had great potential that the state, as it has throughout history, crushed.
Yeah, and every time you see RSS feed, click here, that's Aaron Schwartz. And he was a kid when he wrote that and had that vision. A teenager. Absolutely incredible. Let's take a break right here. Our guest tonight, Barrett Brown. He's here helping me take phone calls on this very special Fader night. And we'll continue with your phone calls right after this short break. 323-825-5045. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Barrett and your calls next. Stay with me.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
What can I say about the most popular tea on the internet? And what do customers say about Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com? A lot. But by federal law, we at GetTheTea.com cannot make claims to how this product can enhance your health. We cannot even post our testimonies without being in compliance. So how do we get past the hump? Try our products at GetTheTea.com and see for yourself. You can send us a testimony, but we just can't post it. Bummer. Our products are GMO-free and organic. We pride ourselves in being the best we can be, and we urge you to take charge of your health. We're 11 years strong, and many of our customers have shared their successes with friends and family. Protect your colon. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. GetTheTea.com. GetTheTea.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black, Fader Nights. Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, at JChurchRadio. Simple. And you can also follow Barrett Brown, our guest, at Barrett Brown _. And we're taking calls. The lines are open, 323-825-5045. Now, Barrett, before I get back to the phones, I am going to, after this next couple of phone calls, before we get to the end, I'm going to ask you a couple of UFO questions. And it's about the current state of the mass media. It's not going to be what you expect, but don't let me forget to get this in, okay? I don't want it to get away from me. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Yes. Good evening, Jimmy. This is Phil Christophers in the Pacific Northwest.
Hi, Phil.
And good evening, Barrett. So, Mr. Brown, my question for you is, do you feel that there is actually still a fourth estate that's actually functioning in this admittedly dysfunctional government? I guess it would be a way I'd phrase the question.
Absolutely, to some extent. I mean, there's still things being properly done here and there. There are good journalists who know what they're doing. Some of them are younger. Some of them are sort of old school, people who've been around a while and have kind of developed talents for investigative journalism. I've seen it happen. I've worked with many of them. But on the whole, it is not up to the task of serving as our central nervous system for a complex 21st century imperial republic. It's just not. And that should be of concern to anyone, whether or not you support the Imperial Republic, whether, regardless of how you think about the U.S., it is not a good thing to have a media infrastructure that still thinks pretty highly of itself, despite all things. Because to the extent that they are worthwhile, and they are to some extent, when they get things wrong and don't deal with those things, and this is one of my main focuses before I got involved with Anonymous, was media criticism. That was my profession, essentially, and it still kind of is. There is no negative feedback for the most part in the system, as in you can be a columnist like Thomas Friedman or Charles Krathheimer, and you can, if you go back and read their output from the last 15 years, 20 years even, you'll notice that they tend to get their predictions absolutely wrong. And they get away with it because, for one thing, people rarely go back and read old columns by these Pulitzer Prize winners. And second of all, the people at the Washington Post and New York Times don't necessarily care. These are celebrity columnists. They have a name. Their output, whether or not it affects us for better or good, is beside the point to them. And most of them don't have any idea. They don't know one way or the other if these are valuable columnists. If they were wrong about every single war in the past 20 years, even down to the specifics in some cases, and are still considered by other big mainstream columnists as military experts, for instance. So any other industry that works like that would fail. The media is able to kind of fail without it being as clear of the extent as it would be if it was a mechanic fixing your car. That's very much the nature of politics and sociology in general, is that those are the places you can be utterly wrong, utterly unreasonable, and still be successful. And so that's a problem, and it's one of the things that we're trying to fix at Pursuance by kind of providing this apparatus for crowdsourced research, among other things, and trying to get more journalists to use this and tell them and show them, look, this works. Having crowdsourcing works under certain conditions, and we know a little bit about it. you can find out more experimenting with it. It'll make your job easier. So that's a solution I've been looking at for 10 years, and that's what Pursuance originally grew out of. And it's something that we can build upon, and meanwhile we can build independent press outlets, as has been done successfully in some cases, and expand their reach. And that's happened too. So that's why I would say it's not entirely broken.
Excuse me. It seems to. You didn't say it. I will. So I'll state it. It's come down to not about being right or wrong, but it's about clicks.
Yes, that's a huge part of that's what the people want now for the most part. That's a cardinal sin of humanity that a great deal of the American public has fallen into, of tribalism, caring less about principles and more about some alleged long-term goal that you feel requires hypocrisy, obscurantism. The whole Europe was run on obscurantism for a long time. We call it the Dark Ages, and it's the trend that most frightens me. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong that we can fix, but when the media has severe systematic deficits that are not going to be addressed from the inside, and when the public itself, for the most part, even if there are things I agree with them about, it's frightening, the extent of it.
Let's go to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling? Say hi to Barrett Brown.
Barrett, hi, how are you? This
Fantastic.
is Isaac from Anaheim. Excellent call. You make so many good points. Let me tell you, I am very involved in Hollywood. Okay, I can't tell you what I do, but ever since the day that Trump was elected, I was on a set somewhere, and I mean, these people were not acting rationally. These people were crying. They were like babies having tantrums. These people in Hollywood have been in control for so long with their mind control, MK Ultra, CIA, FBI, deep state manipulation, that is really what bothers them right now. And it's going to bother them as long as, Trump is in office right now. These people knew that they've had control of culture. And now they're starting to lose that control because the internet's taking over. I mean, they still have Netflix, which is part of their control paradigm. They still have China owning AMC theaters. They basically, the Zionists mixed with the communists and the Saudi Wahhabis are now the new axis of evil. And unfortunately, we're aligned with that.
That's a pretty interesting take, and thank you for that, Isaac. Do you see? Well, okay.
Let me say this. Trump had a reality show for 7 or 8 years, and he had another show. He is someone who associates very closely with the person that this caller, with the people that this caller attributes these characteristics to. So I would find it very surprising if it turned out that he's going to do the things that a lot of the people, for instance, who follow QAnon think he's going to do. There's nothing in his history that really indicates that to anyone who's not just looking for a silver cloud, the silver lining. This is a guy with a long documented history that you don't have to depend on what anyone said about him. You can go and look at his statements. And I think it's kind of unusual. I think it's strange that he's been attributed this anti-establishment. I mean, he is anti-establishment in the way that he has broken down a lot of the frou-frou. He's broken down a lot of the edifice, which is helpful to people like me, obviously, because that edifice was really the only thing that was convincing sort of vague-minded people that this system is in great shape. So that's actually good. Again, the man, he himself has made pretty clear his beliefs about individual rights. He's done it over and over again. And I don't see him as the hero who's going to come and restore all of the various things that we were supposedly taken from by, the Hollywood people or whoever.
Yeah, and I understand the call, but there's another thing about this that, first off, I don't do politics on the show. And one of the reasons why I do the conspiracy of politics, that's an easy road to go down. But the reason why I don't do politics, and especially more and more today, is that it absolutely divides and causes anger. I have an audience that is very diverse, and I want them to stay together. And as soon today, it just doesn't matter. The media has chosen the lines in the sand, and they enjoy the divide and conquer rule that is so prevalent, and that it disturbs me. So when we talk about Trump, we could say the same thing about a democratically elected president. I think those same issues would be there, and it doesn't really matter. So do you understand my take on this?
No, absolutely, and it's a very reasonable approach. Obviously, the key thing is to assemble coalitions that can do these things that no reasonable person who appreciates individual rights can disagree on. So we can differ about what the causes are, and we can differ about the particular people involved. I happen not to think, for instance, that it makes a great deal of sense to say that Trump is going to oppose the Zionists, given what he's actually done in Israel. But again, so it's one of those things where people sort themselves out into effective groups that they can decide for themselves what they're willing to agree with, what they're willing to agree to disagree on, and to the extent we get that right, and bring in people who are intellectually honest at the very least, then we can see these things being addressed in ways that I think loose, overly broad ideology and overly broad theories about what is doing what doesn't help us do as much. It's not as effective as nuanced thinking.
Yeah, and those days are gone. In that, if you are in a conversation, it doesn't even have to be on this show. It could be at a restaurant, and somebody brings up Trump or brings up Hillary. Somebody, what? I'm out of here. And suddenly it's all this anger. Where whatever happened to listening? And the other thing is that it's really a simple point. This country is built on people being different, and that's what made us so cool, right? That's what made us so great. Everybody was different, and we collectively just came together, and because of that, it's what made this country's foundation so strong. And now nobody wants to even contemplate the past and what made this country great to begin with. It's a fascinating thing to see happen so quickly in this country. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Barrett Brown.
Hello, Barrett. This is Gabriel.
Hey, Gabriel.
Hello, Gabriel.
Colorado. I'm sitting here listening, and I'm just kind of like, ultimately like blown away. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like your side of the community, as far as breaking open the secrecy and making sure people understand what is being hidden, is very important. And it's kind of like how I feel from like my side of the fence as far as ufology and UFOs go, because we are trying to get all these secrets broken open and get everybody to see and hear and understand what a lot of us know to be true. And I think that you kind of bring that side of the the hacker, quote unquote, side of it. It almost feels like to me like we're going to be an amalgamation where it's all going to come together from all and other different genres as well, because there's so much hidden from us. And I kind of wonder how you feel about, the kind of UFO phenomenon as it is respective to like just secrecy as far as in general for what the government is hidden and corporations have hidden and all these things that they do. I mean, how involved do you feel UFOs and ultimately extraterrestrials, kind of reflect in that?
It's never been at the forefront of my thinking, in large part because it's so inaccessible. As in, for one thing, it's not something that I've felt as important as that issue would be. it's of transcendent importance if we're alone in the universe or not, and if not, to what extent it's something that is now taken very, very seriously by people who think about the long-term future of humanity. It's something where there is a methodology that's been composed, by militaries and by social scientists and by groups like the Brookings Institution, as you probably know.
Right.
It's something that's been thought about, and I also what interests me most about it is I like anything in which there is a fundamental dispute. I like to figure out why some people are adverse to certain kinds of theories, why they're just automatically adverse to it, how they came to that position, whether or not it's valid. Now, in the case of people who, for some reason, are just virulently, I don't know how to pronounce words, are very much opposed to, the idea of UFOs, I've tend to find that it seems to just emerge from this things they've picked up, sort of vague ideas that they associate something with something silly and then they just write it off. And that's something that actually applies very much to what I do. It's easier now. It's hard to remember how much more difficult it was in 2010 to talk about large government apparatuses that can put out propaganda in very advanced ways. But luckily, when we started cracking open things like persona management, and now, given that everyone is very worried about bots, which are very simple, sort of blunt versions of persona management, which is a very sophisticated way of running these people, we're now, I think it's easier to not just make the case reasonably, but to make the case in a way people will accept that you are never well served by assuming that you know a great deal about a specialist subject. And so people who do the actual legwork and the research and all that and have informed opinions across the board, those are the people I always respect and want to work with, regardless of what those beliefs might be, if they can defend them. Now, I read a book by Jacques Vallée.
Oh, really?
Again, I'm very interested in, what you might call the psychology of thought. I mean, it's a bad term. I'm interested again in how people come to the conclusions they do, and I'm also interested in very unusual answers to these questions. And so, not being hugely familiar with the UFO literature, I found it was a very interesting take. That sort of it was ultimately a agnostic take, but it had very interesting things to say about the intelligence community and some of the organizations that back in the 60s and 70s were proliferating, some of which were very bizarre, and why they might exist. And beyond, so there's plenty there that if I had more time, I would explore further. I've just been occupied with, dealing with the governments here on Earth.
And I totally agree with you, because for me, I'm only 36, and I think when I was younger, my dad was involved with underground BBSs and just kind of underground computing in the very beginning. I mean, he still writes programs to this day. But my mom at the time worked for the DOD in finances, and so it was she was coming home and confiding in him these things she was learning, because she worked under Dick Cheney, and she was learning all these things and seeing all the things going on that she was just told to process and pass forward. Whereas my dad, who was the logical, analytical, deep thinker, was like, well, why is it like this? Why are they doing this? How does this work? I mean, all these things are coming together so strangely. So his brain goes on this path where he can't believe what's happening and how it's going this way. And my mom, is more of a spiritual kind of, who got me into extraterrestrial and spirituality and kind of digging deeper into what's actually real. And the two, have been a racing path for me, because at times I'm more interested in what information is being hidden from us from just, like your side of the fence, because that is it's like you said, it's easier to grasp and easier to hold. And for some of us who are only focused on ufology, that other side of it is just as important, and you have to understand it, because it's like Jimmy said, where if those kind of subjects come up and we just storm off because we don't want to hear that there's a deep state, then we're totally missing the connections between all these pieces. because all of them are going to come together. And I feel, and I wonder how you feel about it, is do you think all of these pieces, once they come together, are going to break down this quote-unquote wall and allow us to have the freedom that we should have in this country that kind of, started as?
I would actually be surprised if a major revelation regarding UFOs led to a comprehensive, improved, freer, better world. I can see that I think the Brookings Institution, back when they first started looking at the issue, and other groups that have had policy on UFOs for a long time, I think that's their conclusion. It could be wrong, and then of course that presumably would be the reason for having a UFO policy in the first place. Is there this huge thing that's going to happen? How would that change people? And no think tank is prescient. They can make predictions about the future, about human psychology. In some cases, they have access to more data than we do, in part because they have all kinds of bizarre, unethical history of the CIA and of the Japanese war criminals that we captured and learned from, and the Nazis as well. They have a larger body of knowledge to decide how people are going to react to different things. We also have, of course, the War of the Worlds incident.
Sure.
So I can't say I'm an optimist about it. And again, I am agnostic on most of the issues. I will tell you that the very fact that there is a UFO policy and the fact that Brookings Institution was writing these documents about these things, that is something that any journalist who just laughs and says, "Oh, UFOs," is a fool. That is immediately your job to look into why that's the case. Doesn't matter if UFOs exist or not. It is a part of the human psychology, and to the extent that's true, it can be leveraged by bad actors. Beyond that, obviously, to the extent that it is true, and I agree with Jacques Vallée that there is some phenomenon that may be immaterial. It may not be a physical phenomenon, or it could be some combination of things. But to the extent that is the case, including to the extent that obviously there are plenty of scientists who do not oppose the idea of either extra-dimensional beings or sort of physical, old school aliens of the popular imagination. It's a crime against the human intellect and against our progress forward to use arguments from absurdity and sort of scoff at things without having fully investigated them. And unfortunately, it's a very widespread crime. If it were true that there was, for instance, a secret alien government, we would never know about it. Because how do you begin the process of getting an editor or producer to listen to that? I can't even get them, for the most part, to acknowledge things that I've already written about elsewhere, because they don't believe them if they haven't seen them picked up by other outlets. There's just a lot of heuristics involved. There's a lot of just poor logic involved in the way in which we respond to things, and that's one of those things that I don't see being fixed anytime soon.
Gabriel, thank you for the phone call, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem.
Great phone call. Barrett, can I get you to hang on for 10 minutes, do a little overtime?
Sure.
I'm not finished tonight, but I want to go back and actually finish your thought there, which is this. You said something that I think was critical. If you went to your news director or your editor and said, like, say, for instance, Vanity Fair, right? HuffPost, you might get away with it. But if you went to them and said, hey, I got this serious piece here about UFOs, an abduction or a sighting that happened, and I've got this, and can I move forward with this? Can I go out and start to talk to these people and these witnesses? Would you even have that conversation with your editor? I mean, where would that go?
I can tell you there are conversations with my editors that I've had and that resulted in me quitting eventually over those kind of things. In one case, I was asking to write about something that I'd already written about before. This is Romos coin, which was this large apparatus that the U.S. government uses, sort of propaganda and surveillance thing. It's sort of too complex for us to get our head around, but it involves all these aspects that we can point at, like everything from natural linguistics processing to cell phone games. It was a very strange deal. I wrote about it eventually for The Guardian and put out a piece on our website back in the Project PM days. And more recently, Max Blumenthal has referenced that because there was one aspect of it that this editor could not get his head around, and that was that Apple and Google had both met with Aaron Barr and these companies, HB Gary, the ones that we investigated originally that were involved in this Team Themis scandal, they had met with them and some larger companies to work on this recompete contract for this big apparatus. Now, this is something we know. The emails on this come from the same place. The emails came on all these other things that were a big news item for a month after we discovered them. The whole Team Themis thing, going after journalists, blah blah blah. And we had the emails. I could point to them. But for some reason, this editor, who had been an editor at major publications for quite a while, he just didn't think it could be the case, and he started lecturing me on how I misunderstood something, and. So I can't even imagine, if a UFO crashed in the backyard of where I'm at right now, I'd probably just, I might take some pictures, but I wouldn't send them to any of the publications that I write for. Luckily, I don't have to freelance very much anymore. I've got the book coming out and all that, so I'm getting out of that whole thing because trying to convince an editor. Of something he doesn't want to be convinced of, or something that sort of goes against his idea that the press has things under control. A lot of people the reason they don't believe that JFK could have been assassinated by a conspiracy involving CIA elements is because they have that much faith in the press that they would have gotten it right. And that's a big part of why it's very difficult to deal with anything that, for some reason, even has the aura of being a conspiracy theory. The term conspiracy theory, of course, is vastly misused, as if conspiracies were some supernatural thing that we can't prove. The DOJ charges hundreds of people with conspiracies every month. This opens up other topics, just about how we think about secrecy and how we think about the possibilities inherent to humanity. But we're a race that, thousands of years ago, throughout much of the world, convinced people to build pyramids in honor of their godhood. There is a vast potential of human experience and of human folly, and we have records of a great deal of it. Some very recent, unfortunately. It would be foolish for anyone to ever really set forth to really hold on to a concrete view of life and of reality, and that's what people have done for thousands of years. And we look back at them, and now we see they're wrong. Right. We think they're wrong.
That's right.
And we don't take the same lesson to heart. So that's a huge problem that informs lots of other little problems as well.
Well, it's easier to just take the easy road. Right? It's
As a practical matter, no journalist wants to, even if a journalist is convinced that there is something that is of importance that he can probably prove via documents, he has to ask the question, will anyone pay attention? Will I even get this past an editor? And in the process, will I destroy my ability to do other stories?
That's right.
And that's absolutely the main thing. There is less need than we would hope in an ideal world for the kind of censorship apparatus that some people think we have. A lot of it is automatic. So a lot of it is done via the failures of that industry. A lot of it is done person to person. It's the failures that occur when people don't think properly.
Let's take a break right here, and then I'm gonna hold you over for about 10 more minutes, okay? And I really appreciate this conversation. This is Fade to Black. It's Fader Night. I am your host, Jimmy Church. More of your phone calls are next, but I'm going to hold Barrett over because I want to ask him about those days of disclosure with the New York Times. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Here, and you are listening to my boy Jimmy Church on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously, go Beckley Teppy. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hey, can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. The holidays are coming. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black, very special Fader night. Barrett Brown is here, hanging with the phone calls, I might add. And he's doing a little overtime with us. I didn't want to let him go without asking you about this, Barrett, which is, and it's interesting how you brought up Jacques Vallée and Brookings, and certainly you've got a good fundamental foundation here, and I think that's great when we're talking about UFOs. But you're also a journalist, and you monitor what the mass media is doing. Back in December 16th of 2017, the New York Times released this UFO information about the Pentagon having a secret program. Some videos were released. A pilot had come forward, and so forth. And that spun out of control. And we had about 2 or 3 months, I'm sure you saw all of it, of constant media coverage of the UFO subject for the first time ever in the history of this country. It's never been covered like that before. 2 things came out of that. One was the coverage, but the second part was the mass media suddenly, whether it was print, online, or television, was suddenly comfortable with the subject. What did you think about that as you saw this front page news of UFOs for the first time?
My experience with both being a subject of the press and being a journalist and a press critic who pays special attention to journalism is generally that a lot of the things that go down are very much the complex results of personal ambition, careerism, heuristics, just poor thinking, money, and ideology, but mixed in different amounts that varies from outlet to outlet. There is also, of course, historically a degree of infiltration by intelligence communities of the U.S. press, and that was, I think, probably at its peak in the later end of the Cold War, or the 60s and 70s, when you had Reuters, Washington Post, Time magazine was voluntarily sort of in the service of the CIA. Henry Luce was having said that, right now, so I read that article when it came out, and I was obviously interested to see what would come of it from the press. And I didn't pay close enough attention to see how much coverage there was in the aftermath. I did find it very telling and unsurprising that there was a mention in that article of this alien alloy that was being held in a building, I guess in New Mexico. Something that was sort of noted in passing and then not really dwelled upon.
Right.
And so there's a number of frameworks this can fall under. This we can explain this as. My framework for this is that for some reason or another, these figures around that project, which in my understanding includes some people who are basically private citizens who were always interested in UFOlogy and have now been approached and asked to sort of, oversee this media initiative. And beyond that, my interest has mostly been in how the press takes it. And the press, I don't think did a great job of, running with the questions here, like, what's the deal with that alien alloy? That would have been my first question. Like, hey, you just said there's an alien alloy in this building. That's kind of a huge deal, which has been sort of buried the lead. I don't think the people who wrote that article, I do not think they were working in accordance with some plan. It's possible they were being given information by people who were. I can say that if someone does an article for the New York Times about something like UFOs, it's something that the editors doesn't necessarily encourage them to do, but it's unusual, obviously. And I'm not saying anything surprising there, but I wonder at the dynamics there at the New York Times and how this came about. Beyond that, really, I'm very much. I'm not sure if nonplussed is the correct term. I've never really figured out what nonplussed means. I am confused about the situation.
And then there's the other side of the issue, which is, and you brought up the Brookings Institute and the other reports that were done by different agencies leading up to this, that once this was exposed, like the New York Times did it, and then it was, CNN and Fox and BBC and everybody running with the story, that religions didn't collapse, right? Wall Street didn't fall. There wasn't pandemonium or anarchy or civil unrest. That part, it seemed to just kind of blow by everybody, and there wasn't this crazy reaction that others had suggested would happen once it was exposed like it was.
Part of that has to do with how bizarre things are already without bringing UFOs into the thing. There's a blanket of unusual things going on that probably muffled it a little bit, but undoubtedly that's also because, a limited disclosure like that, regardless of the truth behind it, that is something that people can easily accommodate into their worldview. The people who believe that UFOs definitely do not exist and that they're, just or whatever, they'll have no problem with that. They'll say, "Oh, this is some kooky guys," and there's nothing to it. They'll say that. The ones who are have very fundamentalist religious beliefs around the world will incorporate it very quickly and easily into their worldview, just as the Catholic Church has done for thousands of years when they've needed to. The fact of the matter is that we are these conscious beings that exist in this incomparable situation already, and so really nothing should surprise anyone. But there are sort of mental structures in place that again that can make some things dangerous. But a lot of the metaphors that they use about a one civilization more advanced encountering another one, and that civilization collapses. That's often true, but it's often not. I mean, the Chinese had no problems, encountering people with sometimes more technology than them and incorporating them into their culture, and they've done a great job of that in the last couple hundred years. A lot of the examples of the Aztecs and Incas, there are other factors there. It wasn't just they were overwhelmed by Cortez and company. There were just other factors in play. So I can still see why a high-end sort of think tank person around the government intelligence would have been concerned about that possibility back in the 50s, especially what they do about the sort of Cold War thinking. I guess we now have more knowledge about how the public will react to gradual disclosures of any contact with aliens. We know that now, I guess.
Yeah, and the other, and you're right about one point. And before I even say what that is, I do want to thank you for coming on tonight. It's been an amazing conversation. I look forward to talking not only in the future, but you mentioned QAnon. I do want to get into that with you at a later date and some other stuff. But just been a fascinating conversation, and thank you. But you did bring up, I think, a very important point. Some of the stuff that you exposed, not only with some of the surveillance programs and the civilian contractors and corporations and the MIC, the military-industrial complex, that are using against our citizens, that takes away some of the shock of other things that would be exposed later. And I think that's a very good point that you brought up, and you were part of that. Now, before I say goodnight, Kickstarter has got 3 days left. Where can everybody go? We do have one of the links up for Kickstarter, but pursuanceproject.org is the Kickstarter listed there.
Absolutely. It's at the very top there. So you can look at the project, and you can look at the information on the Kickstarter at that link. So you can get a good overview of what this is and why it's worth your support.
Thank you so much, Barrett. Welcome back, man.
It's good to be back. It's kind of good to be back.
You know what? Go eat some string beans, man, and welcome back. And I can't wait to have you back on the show. I know I'm looking at these reactions from everybody tonight inside of this community, and it's a large one, and they just really enjoyed the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
Barrett Brown, everybody. It's very simple. Go over to jimmychurchradio.com. You can click on the Kickstarter links there, and it's also pursuanceproject.org. Go and check it out. It's an unbelievable project. He's been thinking about this and putting this into place now for almost 10 years, and it's ready to go. So you can go and do your part over at Kickstarter and go and read about all of the details at pursuanceproject.org. So with that, thank you so much, Barrett. Behave and be well. And I need to, as I say goodnight to Barrett, I'm going to get back to these phones. I've got so many calls that have been on hold, but Barrett just did 2 hours and 15 minutes tonight on Fader Night and took all of those phone calls. So there you go. Let's go back to the phones. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Deb from Sacramento.
Hi, Deb. What'd you think about that conversation?
I mean, I had questions I wanted to ask him. I'm bummed that I didn't get to him in time because of all his research and everything. But yeah, I mean, a fascinating person, and thank God he's free.
Yep.
Finally.
Unbelievable. Yeah. One of the points that he brought up, I didn't want to dwell on the prison experience. He was like, Jimmy, I'll talk about all of that. But I didn't want to revisit those because it's not exactly a fun time. But after he gets out, the second he talked to Vice, they arrested him again. And I was reaching out to Barrett to come on Fade to Black. And, and we had, I was pushing, and it was about to happen. And then they turn around and arrest him for speaking to Vice, which stopped him from coming on this show. And it's like revisiting the nightmare again for him. And they held him at an undisclosed location, and they wouldn't tell anybody, his family or anything, what was going on. And it was like the nightmare started all over again. It was an unbelievable thing. He has been through a lot. Just talk about.
Sounds like it.
He takes activists to a whole nother level, man. He definitely lives up to everything that he says that he is about.
Absolutely. Hey, can I go down another road here real quick?
Sure.
Okay, because I didn't get to talk to Barrett. Since you had Emery on the other night, man, my head was just wrapping around the information that Emery gives us. And one of those things that he dropped was Malaysian Flight 370. And when he disclosed what he felt what really happened with that, and I think the Fader Nods audience is so big, a lot of people tune in. So I hope everyone relates to what I'm referring to. So as I thought about that situation, it's like, so when they do something like that, is they're thinking, well, we got to snuff this whole plane full of people to save this server and save possibly thousands of military or government lives because of the sensitive information on this server. So does the means justify the ends? And obviously the answer in their mind was yes. And so that made me think back to a conversation that you had with Tom DeLonge. And I think, I don't remember exactly how he put it, but he was talking about how the guys that have been, we all get to go live our lives, and they're into the heavy stuff, and we have no idea what they're dealing with, and they have real hard decisions to make. And it kind of made me go down that road mentally, like, well, what was he referring to, but yet he couldn't talk about it. So does the means in his mind justify the ends also? Because he knows supposedly these inside things that they have to sacrifice one thing to save, who knows, thousands or millions of people. It kind of just got me to thinking.
Well, what I found, and I'm in agreement with you in that there's something going on here. And before we go, well, wait a minute, I brought up the possibility of, a portal or UFOs. I was thinking something supernatural, paranormal. But there was, when the second plane was shot down, this is where I had an issue. So I go back and I looked at Malaysian Airlines. Now, before anybody picks apart what I'm about to say factually, don't worry about doing that. I did go back and look, and I think they had, at the time, something like 12 planes, right? 12 or 14 or whatever. And we have to stop and think about the odds of two identical planes for the same airline, right? And I just thought this is way beyond the odds of the known universe. This is like somebody hitting the lottery, the mega 2 weeks in a row. I mean, what are the odds of that, right? And not only those odds, but the fact that it came from such a small pool of airplanes. It's a very, very small number. And I thought that there's got to be a way that these two are connected. Could it have been the same plane? Now, when some of the conspiracy guys out there that were looking at, I got tons of email, Deb, showing me the photographs of the plane and different angles of it and things that said that it was the same plane, that it wasn't a different plane. I realized that, I forget, one of the guys that was presenting this stuff was getting his website hacked. And images were disappearing. I can't remember who it was. It doesn't really matter.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
Right. And so I'm trying to chase down this info, and every time I was getting close to starting to see it, these images were disappearing, and the site was hacked. But that's when I had to back up and go, wait a minute here. How gullible is this planet that they are able to accept that Malaysian Air lost 2 planes like that, nearly back to back, and that we're just supposed to go, well, stuff happens. I want to use another word there. That it just happens. No, it doesn't. Right? But nobody. It seemed like to me when it came to not only what happened in the Ukraine, but the original Malaysian plane disappearance, that there were no journalists out there and no organizations that were willing to ask the very simple, basic questions, which is, how do you lose a plane on radar when we have worldwide GPS these days? That Rolls-Royce has all of the real-time telemetry going back to their company for every Rolls-Royce engine that is running on this planet, and they are able to look at the status of any engine, and suddenly when a plane disappears, they don't have that data. And these are very basic, fundamental questions that weren't being asked. And I was very frustrated with that. I didn't understand why, and I still don't to this day, why somebody doesn't go back and investigate the story, that everybody was willing to just let it go. Oh, the search ended.
Because
okay.
the press is, the majority of the mainstream media is paid off and to suppress these things, and that's why they arrest people like your guest. They do not want the truth coming out about this or Vegas or 9/11 or any of it. And the minute that story came out of Emery's mouth, it suddenly, number one, I believe anything that he says because I think he's very credible. But it just kind of made so much sense. It's like, whoa, there we go.
Well, and we have everything about 370 with all of those questions that are there. Okay, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of unanswered questions there. There's that part. But when we go back to the Ukraine, we have the plane, we have the wreckage. And it is in a civilized part of this world where you had 2 armies against each other. And so there is the weapons on the ground, there's the flight data, there is black boxes, there are radars, the ability to find out what kind of missile and where and who shot this plane down, that all of this investigation and journalism would be easy to do, and none of it was followed through on. None of it. That is a crazy situation and the world was just willing to just go, oh, wow, whatever. It was just, it just was shot down and crashed. It doesn't matter who did it, whatever. And no ability to go to the crash site, if you remember, right? And it seemed to be accepted, and I was very frustrated with that. I would have thought that there would have been an army of researchers, investigators, and organizations that would have put up a fight and gone in and tried to find out the truth, but it never happened. So why didn't it? Was it because it was the same? Was it MH370? Right? Was it this crazy conspiracy theory that people have been talking about? Well, now, you know what? We'll never know. We never will.
Well, let's not forget the CIA is the one that created the term conspiracy theory, so they did it for a reason. People who want to seek the truth, there's nothing wrong with that, but we're not allowed to. We will on the internet. We search, but then, we're, discounted as conspiracy theorists, but credible people like Barrett, they arrest him. And look what they did to Tommy Robinson. So again, it is very frustrating.
You know what was really cool tonight with Barrett? Now, I had no idea about Barrett's UFO knowledge. Okay? Didn't know. And I've been looking at his life for a long time and been a big fan of not only his work, but his fight for journalism and freedom of speech. But very refreshing to hear his take when he is talking about, he didn't mention Project Mockingbird by name, but that's what, he was suggesting. So he is quite familiar with all of these subjects, and he was very comfortable in going there. I was very impressed with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the minute you said he picked up Jacques Vallée's book, I could hear the surprise in your voice. Like, oh, whoa, really?
I did, too.
Yeah, that was cool.
I did. I was like, he didn't just say Jacques Vallée, did he? And
he's an open dude, man. He's a researcher.
He said Brookings Institute, you know, and you've got to you've got to have a basic little foundation to be able to go into those zones and talk about it. Very, very bright guy with his feet on the ground, and what a great show tonight. Not only for the Fadernauts, but for myself too as well. That was just an amazing conversation.
I'm glad he's on our side.
Oh, he is 100%. I can't. And then he said QAnon. I was like, oh, here we go. You know, and I just thought we're gonna. I wanted to talk to him about QAnon, but he is somebody that, as busy as he is with the Pursuance Project and his new book, you know, My Glorious Defeats, and everything that he's got going on in his life, to say these things right in a row. He is well read, and he is on top of the world as far as research goes.
On top of some of the rhetoric, too. And let me just say in closing, because I'm going to let you go, Jim, I'm a big Trump supporter, but I completely discredit the whole QAnon phenomenon. I think it's a psyop distraction. Take people off what's really important.
Well,
and I probably just made a lot of enemies, and that's all right. You know, it's freedom of speech, but I do think it's a distraction.
Dad, that's what this show is all about. Have a great night and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Jimmy. You too. Take care. Thanks for taking my call.
And with that will wrap this special edition of Fader Night. I do want to thank Barrett Brown for not only coming in and engaging in a very amazing conversation, but manning the phones here. That was just incredible. What a great conversation. Again, pursuanceproject.org. And the Kickstarter links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. And we do have them up right there in Twitter. Oh, man, I want to thank everybody that not only tweeted tonight, but all of the phone calls. What a great conversation. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew, the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2018 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Barrett at BarrettBrown_. Until Monday, everybody be safe. Go Bagley Tappy.